jealousy and
Hey,
money, not
T-Sippers.
crimes.
Hey,
These
hey, hey,
statements
hey.
are the first punches in a high-stakes legal slugfest, and we're
Ooh, it
breaking
done
down
got
every
ugly
word,
today.
every accusation, and every counterpunch.
And when
No
I say
fluff,
ugly, I
just
do mean
raw
ugly.
courtroom drama. So buckle up, because this is going to shake you to your core. Let's get into it. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson, kicked off the May 12th trial with a 30-minute
I don't know what
statement
to.
that was like a thunderbolt aimed at the jury of 8 men and 4 women. Johnson didn't waste a second, pointing at Sean Diddy Combs in the courtroom and declaring,
Baby,
"This is Sean Combs."
I don't know what to say about Diddy.
A cultural icon, a businessman, larger than life. But there was another side to him, a side that
Y'all come on in. Hey, Cynthia.
Power and fear.
Baby, boom.
A chilling picture, alleging Diddy used his fame, wealth, and influence to lure women.
I don't know how to
into what
process
seemed like
all of this.
romantic relationships, but only to trap them in a web of coercion, forced to perform under the influence of ketamine, ecstasy, GHB, and other drugs. And they were often laced without their knowledge to keep them obedient and compliant. She claims
I don't, baby. So,
to ensure victims' silence.
Opening statements and first witness and
Johnson outlined a
bombshells, baby.
Accusing Diddy of kidnapping, arson, drug distribution, bribery, obstruction of
justice. So he was trying to be Ira.
Facilitated by his inner circle, bodyguards, assistants, execs, who allegedly
Diddy was trying to mimic Ira.
She zeroed in on specific victims, stating that Cassie
Ventura,
Diddy's ex-girlfriend, who Johnson said was loved by Diddy initially, but faced severe consequences if she disobeyed.
One of the well-known
describe a 2016 incident where Diddy,
content creators, she was actually there, in there, cut off by, she say, cut off by
in a Los Angeles hotel hallway. An assault captured on surveillance video that jurors
Justin.
Yes, it's that video.
And what's the other one name?
She alleged Diddy forced Cassie to have sex with male escorts, recording it to blackmail her and made her live in fear that the
they said
her career. Johnson then introduced
he got him in there having sex
in 2020 and
forbidden
only to be coerced
condoms.
Freak off she thought was a one-time deal.
Hold on.
Diddy allegedly refused to let an escort use condoms during sex with James. And when she vomited from the ordeal, he coldly said, "Go do it again." Johnson recounted the time Diddy, in a jealous rage, went to James' home, kicked down the door, and kicked her to the ground when she locked herself in rooms to escape.
Can y'all hear that?
There's another victim, Mia. Personal assistant that was allegedly sexually assaulted by Diddy.
I can't wait to, I'm gonna cut her off. I'm gonna let the people come in before I go in.
An employee forced into an SUV at gunpoint, and a chef who worked grueling hours not procuring food, but drugs for Diddy's parties. She emphasized
Diddy ass is
saying he called himself the king and expected to be treated like one, using his vast resources to commit crime after crime. Johnson,
why he got folks peeing on folks?
Damage reports, text messages.
I wonder was that the same day she was running? Cause the dude, he had the old boy pee on him.
And the thousands of baby oil and lube found in Diddy's homes. Now they're all tying him to the freak-offs. Her statement was a scorching indictment, framing Diddy as a predator who exploited trust and covered his tracks with his empire's power. The defense, well, it was led by Tenny Garagos, daughter of famed attorney Mark Garagos. Now, she countered with a nearly hour-long statement that was a fiery
on Tory Lanez in prison
and dismantled the prosecution's narrative. Garagos didn't dodge Diddy's flaws. She opened with a bold admission. "We will not shy away from the things Mr. Combs did. He's a physical, drug-using person with a different sex life." She referenced the 1,000 bottles of baby oil found in his homes, quipping, "Is that a federal crime?" No.
Opening statement.
Drawing a chuckle from the courtroom, but quickly pivoting to a serious defense. Garagos framed the case as about love, jealousy, infidelity, and money, not racketeering or trafficking, accusing prosecutors of twisting consensual relationships into a criminal conspiracy. She admitted Diddy's domestic violence, particularly in the 2016 Cassie assault, captured on video that we've all seen, calling it horrible, dehumanizing, violent, and terrible, but stressed it's not evidence of sex trafficking, it's evidence of domestic violence. Garagos argued that the 2016 incident stemmed from a fight over a phone, not trafficking, rooted in a toxic decade-long relationship between two people who loved each other. She claimed Cassie was a strong, capable woman who chose to stay with Diddy for 11 years, from 2007 to 2018. Not because she was coerced, but because it was the better choice. As compared to leaving, and that she only exited the relationship when she realized Diddy would never marry her due to his bond with his late ex, Kim Porter. Garagos suggested mutual violence, saying there was hitting on both sides, implying that Cassie was not some helpless victim, but an active participant in a volatile romance. She challenged the prosecution's coercion narrative, asking jurors to consider whether strong women like Cassie could be forced into anything, a point that the judge, well, he questioned, noting that strong people can be coerced just like weak people. Now, Garagos turned to Jane, describing her as part of a toxic and dysfunctional relationship with Diddy, willingly engaging in hotel nights. Her term for freak-offs, yes, she switched the term for freak-offs to hotel nights because she wanted to now, the fight that the prosecution highlighted where Diddy allegedly came to the ground, well, Garagos claimed that it was sparked by Jane slamming Diddy's head in a jealous rage and framing it as mutual aggression, not trafficking. For Mia, the assistant alleging sexual assault, Garagos hinted at inconsistent stories and urged jurors to scrutinize her credibility. She attacked the accuser's motives, pointing to Cassie's $30 million civil lawsuit and another witness's $22 million breach of contract suit, asking, how many millions of reasons does this witness swearing to tell the truth have to lie? Garagos called the freak-off videos intimate and consensual, not blackmail, and questioned why employees never reported abuse until now, suggesting financial gain. She portrayed Diddy as a swinger, not a predator, whose unconventional sex life was being demonized by the government. Garagos ended with a plea. You are the jury. Evaluate the witnesses.
Lord, I can't. Lord, Diddy is something
promising jurors
else.
they see real-time communications proving consent, not crime. Let's unpack the prosecution's ferocious opening because Emily Johnson didn't come to play. She came to bury Diddy. Her statement was a masterclass in storytelling, designed to shock the jury and cement Diddy as a calculated predator. By starting with Diddy's public persona, the cultural icon, the businessman, and contrasting it with the criminal enterprise, Johnson set up this Jekyll and Hyde narrative that's hard to shake. She's saying, you thought you knew Diddy, but you didn't know this. The focus on freak-offs as these coerced, drug-fueled nightmares was deliberate. It paints a vivid, disturbing picture of women trapped, unable to say no, with drugs like ketamine and GHB stripping their agency. Mentioning laced drugs was a gut punch, implying Diddy violated consent at the deepest level. The blackmail angle with recorded video, well, that adds a layer of sinister control, suggesting Diddy wasn't strategic, using fear and exposure to keep victims quiet. Johnson's emphasis on Cassie as a star witness is a big bet. The 2016 video of Diddy's assault is a visual anchor, something jurors can see, making it harder to dismiss.
Babe, I don't know what to say about Diddy.
The gun and the forced sex with escorts, Johnson's building an emotional case, hoping jurors will feel Cassie's fear. Bringing in Jane and Mia widens the net, showing a pattern of abuse across different women. A whole different type of freak. A personal assistant, making it clear this wasn't a one-off. The Jane story with no condoms, vomiting, and then kicking down doors is particularly gruesome. And it was meant to show disgust to the jurors and show how Diddy is callous. Mentioning 20 years of crime,
making
kidnapping, arson, bribery,
a sex worker,
it paints Diddy as a career criminal,
pissing
not
on
a
my
flawed boyfriend. And implicating his inner circle suggests a conspiracy, which is key to the racketeering charge. Johnson's promise of texts, hotel records, and physical evidence like the baby oil is a signal to jurors. We've got receipts. Her king mentality line was a slam, framing Diddy as an arrogant and entitled person, someone who demanded obedience. This statement was a calculated strike, aiming to overwhelm jurors with the scope of Diddy's alleged evil and make them hungry for evidence. But it's risky. Piling on so many crimes could feel like it's overblown if the evidence doesn't match the rhetoric. And Cassie's testimony will need to absolutely deliver in order to back this up. Now let's dig into Tenny Garagos' marathon defense statement, because it was clever, gutsy, and a move to flip the script. Garagos knew she couldn't ignore the Cassie video. It's just too damning. So instead, she leaned into it, admitting Diddy's domestic violence, but referring it as a relationship issue, not a federal crime. By calling the 2016 assault horrible, but tying it to a fight over a phone, she's trying to humanize the conflict, making it about two flawed people, not a predator and a victim. The mutual violence claim is a bold gamble. Saying Cassie hit back risks alienating jurors who see her as a victim. But it's meant to muddy the coercion narrative, suggesting that Cassie had agency. Garagos' line, "there was hitting on both sides," is a direct challenge to the prosecution's helpless victim story, and it's aiming to make jurors question Cassie's credibility. Framing the case as love, jealousy, and money.
Let me pause the opening statement. Let's shift gears and go over here. Let's go here. Let's go here. I may need to stand it up. Or do we need to finish with the analyzing? I don't want to run out.
It's day one of the P. Diddy federal sex crimes trial. A jury is seated and opening statements are in the books. Here's everything you need to know so far. This is Scandal, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Sierra Gillespie.
Scandal, baby. Scandal. I need to sit
P.
it.
Diddy in federal trial. Opening statements presented by the United States attorneys and the defense. I mean, it seems unreal for me, and I wasn't even in the courtroom. And I guess here's the bad news. No cameras are allowed in the courtroom because it's federal court. So we'll have to make do with the courtroom sketches to see what happened. But to hear about what happened, we actually have something a bit better. Law and Crime reporter Elizabeth Milner.
You can just see the lines just going all the way back with media. It's going all the way back just with the public, just so some people can either, one, watch the trial, get a glimpse of Diddy's family members coming in and outside of the courtroom, and even as well as see as his attorneys, whose members include Brian Steele, Mark Agnifilo, Mark Garagos playing in kind of that defensive advisory type of role. So it's crazy out here, especially, you know, it's Diddy, it's high profile celebrities, it's salacious allegations. Then on top of that, he's facing a lot of time behind bars. So you can understand why so many people of the public wanted to be here and wanted to get here super early so that way they could attend. I even heard somebody was standing in line and was auctioning off how much that they would give to somebody else in line for up to $500, $600. So that's just a lot of people here. Now, as far as who was inside the courtroom today, still is a lot of famous faces, or well, let me not say famous faces, but a lot of people that we are definitely familiar with here at Law and Crime. You have Mark Garagos in the courtroom, Karen Agnifilo, who is the wife of Mark Agnifilo, who's also representing Luigi as well too. You had Little Rod inside the courtroom today, and he's one who had filed civil claims against Diddy as well too. He came in probably, I would say, maybe a little like 8:30ish. Kind of came in with sunglasses, 2 chains on, as well as his attorney was inside that courtroom as well too. You have all of Diddy's children, with the exception of his youngest daughter, Love, were inside that courtroom. So that includes Quincy Brown, Justin Combs, Christian Combs, Delilah Combs, Combs, Chance Combs, Jesse Combs. Chance's mother was inside that courtroom. Diddy's mother was inside that courtroom. The daughter of Diddy's youngest daughter was inside that courtroom. And then you have the twins' caregiver, who is also best friends with Kim Porter as well, too. So a lot of people were inside that courtroom as well for just opening statements.
Okay, more from Elizabeth in just a minute, but first, a few things I have to lay out. To start, why are we here? Well, the defendant, Sean Combs, he's known as P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Diddy, all the things. And he faces 5 federal sex crime charges, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Now, P. Diddy has pleaded not guilty to all these charges, which honestly is why we're here right now talking about his first day of trial. And I guess he's actually denied all these allegations really from the start. And I want to talk about what happened today in court because it's so important. But a quick little snapshot
he made a sex worker piss in her mouth.
Specifically Cassie's that was filed in October.
In her mouth.
Cassie's going to be so important in today's story and honestly many
male sex worker.
So that happened. Federal raids then happened in March of 2024, followed by a federal indictment of September of 2024. He was booked into MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center, where he's been ever since. And that brings us to today, May 12th.
Can y'all believe that? In her mouth, not on her, in her mouth.
Sean Combs. So let's move on to opening statements. And really quick, another disclaimer. We will have transcripts from court every single day for you. So literally verbatim, what the defense attorney said, what Cassie on the witness stand said, what every single person said, and I will bring them to you so you will have a look literally inside the courtroom. However, at the time of this recording, it's midway through the day on Monday. The transcript has not yet been released. So make sure to subscribe right now so that you don't miss it later on tonight when I go through them and read them, and then when they're posted. So come back for that, but for now, an overview of both sides. So the government's openings are presented by prosecutor Emily Johnson, and she talks about what we could expect, the allegations that P. Diddy was the kingpin in a criminal enterprise. And again, we don't have the transcripts just yet, so I'm gonna read some quotes, however, they were taken from NBC. So this is per NBC, what Emily Johnson said. She said, quote, he, meaning P. Diddy, he sometimes called himself the king and expected to be treated like one to cater to all his desires. He used his companies to manipulate women, forcing them with male escorts to have sex while he watched. He and his inner circle made sure he got everything he wanted. And of course, the prosecution talked about Cassie. Now, we on Scandal have speculated time and time again that Cassie is victim 1 because it's been reported that she will testify under her real name, Cassandra Ventura. And today was the first day that it was confirmed. Cassie equals victim 1. And prosecutors laid all of this out for the jurors in opening statements, talking about how Cassie and Diddy had this long-time relationship, and they focused on this specific relationship.
Baby, it was over the minute you had somebody piss me in my mouth.
Depended on keeping him happy. Cassie tried her first freak off because she loved him and wanted to make him happy. If Cassie didn't do what he wanted, the consequences were severe. So a quick little break to explain what freak-offs are. I'm going to say allegedly a lot because P. Diddy, again, has pleaded not guilty and has not been convicted of a crime, and that's what lawyer Elizabeth tells me to do. So allegedly. These freak-offs, according to the federal indictment, were sex situations in which Diddy or one of his associates would allegedly drug a victim. So in some instances, allegedly Cassie, allegedly other people as well, then force these people to have sex with prostitutes, allegedly, and then record it at times. Oh, I forgot to mention, Diddy sometimes masturbated during this, and also sometimes had sex and participated.
Allegedly.
So back to those videos. The electronic
was your hand allegedly
during the federal
going up and down?
March of 2024.
Allegedly.
These recordings were allegedly used as revenge porn to silence the victims and make sure they stay quiet. Do not report any of this. Again, another quote from Emily Johnson, quote, he used lies, drugs, threats, and violence to force and coerce first Cassie and later Jane, another victim, to have sex with him in front of male escorts. He directed freak-offs week after week around the country and sometimes out of the country. And that's where we got the federal crime here, the alleged federal crime of transporting people across.
Oh, that crime ain't alleged.
So again, keep that in your back pocket. Another thing prosecutors touched on was the hotel video. And when I say that, I'm sure the image just comes right to your mind. You know what it is. It's the one that was released by CNN showing allegedly P. Diddy beating, allegedly, Cassie. And it's so gruesome, really upsetting that even here on Law and Crime, we don't show it. We only show a screenshot because it, again, is very, very disturbing. And this has been widely publicized, so much so that we learned that some of the jurors, who we'll talk about later on, the demographics and all that, some of the jurors have actually already seen this. They went into trial having that already in the back of their mind. So that's kind of interesting. But so the prosecution talked about this video, saying that Diddy allegedly paid $100,000 in cash to the hotel to keep it quiet so that the video wasn't leaked. The prosecution says this is just another example of Diddy's temper and his abuse. Now, the prosecution kind of ended by teasing who we're going to hear from. So Cassie, the star witness in all of this. Then another woman who goes by Jane, a single mom who was under Diddy's, quote, total control. They also teased that we could hear from a person named Mia, who was Diddy's former assistant, and then, of course, escorts. So here's how Emily Johnson ended the prosecution's opening statement, quote, I ask you to do 3 things. Please pay close attention to the evidence. Follow the judge's instructions on the law. Please use and trust your common sense. If you do all of that, you will reach the only verdict, that the defendant, Sean Combs, is guilty. Here's Elizabeth again.
You know, she starts off with saying, this is Sean Combs. He's a cultural icon, a businessman. He's larger than life. But then she went and kind of talked about the defendant's crimes, the defendant being Diddy, that went past 20 years, you know, kidnapping, allegations of arson, allegations of drug trafficking, sex crimes, obstruction. You know, they were talking about one specific night where the defendant was on the hunt for girlfriend Cassie. So I was pretty surprised there that they just went out of the gates and already had just named her. I was assuming when she were going to be taking the stand, that's when the jurors would know her name, and that's when she would be introduced as, you know, alleged victim number 1. But the government came out and just automatically just named her. You know, they talked about the incident where Diddy found out Cassie was seeing another man, and that Diddy took his gun and his bodyguard, and Diddy threatened to allegedly kill this man that Cassie was with. You know, Emily Johnson talked about how he had beat Cassie so brutally that he also had to take control of her. He kept videos of Cassie sleeping with escorts and threatened to use them against her. These are the types of things we had already known and were already kind of painted out inside those indictments that the government had written up in that type of sort. You know, Diddy referring himself as a king, which is kind of ironic because he has a giant king crown on the back of his neck. You know, Emily Johnson spoke about the defendant using his inner circle to manipulate women that for a while he watched, how his bodyguards kind of played, or bodyguards as well as employees kind of played a role into this alleged RICO conspiracy as well too, you know, and she made it a point to say this case is not about a celebrity's private sex preferences, because that was something that the defense definitely kind of chalked it up to being, just, you know, that he lived an alternative lifestyle, that type of sort, and we'll talk about that more in a second. You know, while there has been a lot of reports about victim 3 and where her whereabouts are or anything like that, the defense didn't talk about alleged victim number 3. Instead, they kept it pretty short and to the point. They talked about Cassie, they talked about Jane, who we presume to be the other alleged victim.
Okay, now onto the defense's opening, which, by the way, really quick, they're making progress in this case. I mean, the fact that we have a jury completely seated on Monday. On Friday, we went into this like, will they seat a jury? They got a jury seated. Then we heard openings from the prosecution.
And the
then
first
we heard from the
witness.
defense, and it just kept going all before lunch. So, okay, good on the government. They've got a great timeline. Okay, so to the defense's opening statement, Tenny Garagos, who's the daughter of the Scott Peterson defense attorney, Mark Garagos. Just kind of keep that in mind if you want to. Now, she calls P. Diddy a complicated man, but says it's not a complicated case. And once again, this is straight from NBC. She said, quote, the only people who knew about a racketeering enterprise are the prosecutors. This case is about Sean Combs' private, personal sex life. The government has no place in his private bedrooms. They say it is not about his private sex life, but the evidence will show that it is. The defense didn't really tiptoe around things. They talked about the hotel video, which I'll get to in a second. That made a lot of headlines. And the other thing that really made headlines in all of this, ever since Sean P. Diddy Combs was arrested, the 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lube. And the defense, you know, talked about it right away. They said, okay, hand up. Yep, Diddy's got a bad temper. Okay, yep, okay, hand up, he gets out of control. However, they argue it's not a crime. Here's what she said, quote, "We will not shy away from the things he did, but we will not own the things he did not do. He is physical, he is a drug user. You may know of his love of baby oil. Is that a federal crime? No." She kind of laid out what we
It is if it's laced.
Here on Scandal, we've talked about this, theorized what sort of route the defense is going to take. And if we're going to believe the opening statement, it seems like we were correct here. So pat on the back for us. Now, she says, okay, freak-offs might be weird to you jurors. It might be something that you're not into. Maybe you don't like to have sex with people you're not married to in group settings, all the things. It could make you uncomfy. However, it was consensual. That's not a crime. This isn't trafficking. Now, this I took straight from the Inner City Press. They tweeted it out. Another quote from the defense's opening statement, quote, "You will hear about swinger parties. They will testify about things that should never be heard in federal courtroom that he liked to watch. You may not like that, but you are not here to judge him for his sexual preferences." Once again, the defense doubled down and said, these are capable, strong adult women. Cassie, Jane, the other accusers, they all chose to stay with Diddy. And it sounds like the defense is going to kind of poke holes in their motive. They straight up said, hey, these women only came forward for money. That's why we're here. Now, they did talk about the hotel video, as I said, and they said, yes, it was disturbing. However, it was just an argument over infidelity. They alleged that Cassie was jealous of any sort of woman that Diddy had been with. And after this physical attack, it showed jealousy on display. Interesting that that's what they talked about. Now, they said that Diddy, yes, okay, he did pay to cover it up. However, it was simply to spare both Diddy and Cassie of embarrassment. So Diddy didn't pay to cover it up so that he wouldn't be charged. It was just so Cassie wouldn't be embarrassed. Okay, back to Elizabeth Milner for a recap of the defense's opening.
Wow.
The defense's opening statements were pretty, we were kind of expecting them. They were going to have to admit that Diddy had been physically violent towards women in the past. They were going to have to admit that Diddy had this type of temper, that, you know, he participated in taking these types of drugs, and that his temper was especially bad whenever he was on drugs and alcohol. You know, there was a point in the openings where Diddy stood up when Tenny Garagos was introducing him to the jury. For the most part, even throughout opening statements, he kind of sat there calmly. He looked.
Can I get the lights up, please?
Who again provided the opening statements on the defense's behalf. You know, the defense was kind of harping on the fact that the government has no place in his bedroom, something that we had talked about many of times. Just how they're kind of painting this as somebody, you know, who did bad things on one hand, but were these bad things criminal? And that was essentially what the defense's argument was there. You know, they said that the defense will see domestic violence in this trial, but, you know, while they do take it seriously, they say it's not sex trafficking. So I feel like they're trying to divide this line between, you know, this being a domestic violence spat or domestic violence toxic relationship type of thing, as opposed to these being actual criminal acts that Diddy was allegedly committing and that type of thing. You know, the defense was saying that these alleged victims were strong, capable women, that they made choices that were for adults, they were free of choice, and they came with both pros and cons, and that type of thing.
Before we sign off for today, I've got to talk about the jury because it was officially seated today, which again, timeline, wild. Okay, so we've got 12 jurors, 8 men, 4 women. Now there are 6 alternates in case something happens. I mean, someone gets way sick, someone sees something that they shouldn't, somebody, you know, talks to someone when they shouldn't, which we'll get to in a second. So we have 6 kind of backups. But according to NBC News, here's the breakdown of the demographics of the jury that has been seated. To start, there was juror 2 who was seated on the jury. 69 years old, he's a man. His job is an actor and also a massage therapist, and he lives in Manhattan. So actually, it's kind of interesting where people live. I thought that that was cool to know. Juror 5 also lives in Manhattan, also a male. This guy's 31 years old, though, and he's an investment analyst. Juror 25, also seated, also a male, lives in Manhattan. He's 51 years old, and this is pretty impressive. He has a PhD in molecular biology and neuroscience. So a smart guy there. Now here's the first woman that was seated, Juror 28. She's 30 years old. She's a deli clerk by day, and she lives in the Bronx with her mom and her brother. Juror 55.
When my team pitched the idea, I thought it was impossible. A pan that sears like stainless, lasts like cast.
65, also a female, also lives in the Bronx. She's 42 years old and works in communications at a correctional facility, which to me, when I heard her job, I thought sounded pretty interesting in that P. Diddy has been at MDC for about 8 months at this time. So just kind of interesting to note. Juror 75 is a 68-year-old male. He is retired now from working at Verizon and lives in Westchester. Also in Westchester, Juror 160, she's a female, and she works as a physician assistant. The next juror stated was Juror 184, 39 years old, lives in the Bronx. He's a social worker for his day job. Juror 201 is 67 years old, also a male, and lives in Westchester. And for his career, he's a logistics analyst. Now, the last juror stated 217. She's 74 years old, a woman, a treatment coordinator, and she lives in Manhattan. So that's kind of the makeup of the jurors that we have seen here listening to opening statements. And here's what our Elizabeth Milner has to say about the jury.
It was really hard to kind of see each and every single one of their faces when both sides were presenting opening statements. But what I did see from being inside that gallery was some people jotting notes, some people just very much intently listening to both Emily Johnson for the prosecution as well as Tenny Garagos for the defense. But as far as the makeup goes, I kind of just took their jury numbers and compared them to the notes that I took last week when I was here for jury selection. You have one who's a scientist, one whose brother is a security guard. He knew Diddy was arrested but didn't know the charges. You have one person who's part of a union job. He works for the Department of Corrections. Another person who is now retired but previously used to work at Verizon. You had another person whose friend is a detective. Son is a security guard. But, you know, as far as the defense was kind of making their objections today as far as jury selection goes, and, you know, just kind of the objections they made that, you know, the government was striking 7 black jurors, that type of thing. There were still black jurors that are going to be serving on this panel who are going to be making these making the decisions going into those deliberations. So from what I saw, the jury makeup as a whole, it really was a diverse group of men and women of all different ages, all different walks of life as well, too.
I wanted to note really quickly a couple of rules that Judge Arun Subramanian laid out for all of the jurors, and they're pretty basic in regards to a criminal trial, not just P. Diddy. So he sat the jury and said, okay, guys, you can't form an opinion until you're deliberating. Like, you really can't make any sort of decisions. You have to listen to both sides, all the testimony, all the evidence. You have to base it on the evidence or lack thereof when you do deliberations, but you can't make your mind up now. And number 2, don't discuss this with anyone, which I think about all of the time. Maybe this is why I haven't been seated on a jury. You can't discuss it with literally anyone. You can't go home and call your best friend while you're washing the dishes. You can't talk about it. Do not talk about it. Do not use social media either. He's like, stay off there. Don't follow the news. Don't read it. Don't post. So really tricky for some of these jurors. Oh, and he did let us in on a little clue of potentially how long this could last. Now, originally, we heard it would last between 8 to 10 weeks, and the judge says a finish date could be right around July 4th. Now, it could go a bit longer, but kind of put that in the back of your mind. July 4th is right around when the Diddy trial should be wrapping up. Oh. In the meantime, subscribe to our Scandal channel so that you don't miss anything. Like I...
Okay, hold on. Let's go to the next one. Hold your mule. Get my likes up while we shift gears. Cause we got it explosive. I don't want to listen to you, Nancy. I don't like you. I can't wait till we get to the nitty and the gritty, baby. But get the lights up. Get the lights up. Get the lights up. Come on. We're trying to get to the nitty and the gritty. Where is the nitty and the gritty? And when I say nitty and gritty, I do mean nitty and gritty. Oh, you freak, you. Baby. Y'all, where my lights at? I don't know why y'all play with me. me hear her.
What's so fabulous about these is that they're clear on the top.
She was there live
and
today.
they transition.
Y'all want to start. Listen, tomorrow I'm going to be going live in the morning, in the afternoon, and I'll go live
Shout out to
right
Tisa.
outside the courthouse as soon as the trial is over. I might even start sneaking out and giving y'all updates and coming back. It was a YouTube reunion. Do y'all know that MEMS make it make sense? Baby, we actually started off doing reality TV panels together, and now we were both looking at each other. You know, he's a cutie patootie, right? We were both looking, and he was just sitting there looking lost, wearing black. Justin, he is not. When girls have opening statement was, when I say it was long, when I said it was meandering, and she was talking at a pace like this, like she was speaking to children, and not 5-year-olds, but 3-year-olds that are in trouble. She was talking like this. And I was like, I felt like when I watch my audiobooks, the way I slow it down, or that's not true. Y'all know me. I speed my audiobooks up. Every audiobook I listen to or podcast is at 1.5, 1.75. I'm like, come on, give me the information. She seemed like she put her stuff into 0.75, 0.60. It was chopped and screwed and not in a good way. I was already jet lagged, so I was literally dozing off. I felt like I was in college again at the one professor just dozing off, okay? But there's more, okay? So then the defense came up. Tenny Garagos gave the opening statement. Okay, so the prosecution was like, yo, this person is a sex trafficker. He has racketeering. It is violence. It's not just Cassie. Spoiler alert, victim 3 is not testifying. That is largely to be believed to be Gina by me because Judge Arun, who was actually pretty good. Judge Arun was like, Judge Arun is, I didn't know what to think about him because I do know that he is young. And when I say inexperienced, it doesn't mean he's stupid. He's very well educated. He used to clerk for a Supreme Court justice. However, you know, you got to know about the legal finesse. The thing is, they had somebody on Diddy's staff. Diddy now has 2 black lawyers. One black guy, he has a bald head. His name is Xavier. And the other woman, I don't know why I can't figure out her name. Excuse me, her name slips my mind. But they had 2 black counsel. Oddly enough, Diddy, it was the 6-pack of white women, which were the prosecutors, according to Diddy's team. Then it was the prosecutors, paralegals. There were 3 of them. This is second row. Then it was an expert witness with glasses. It was that girl, the new one, the black woman, and then it was a black guy, Xavier. And then it was Mark Agnifilio, who literally looked like Chicken Little with his new haircut. And get this, I was falling asleep at trial 2, but I could have sworn I saw Mark Agnifilio falling asleep at trial 2. It got boring for a second, right? But it don't matter because I was there for the whole 8 hours. I'll tell you what happened. So anyway, it was Mark Agnifilio, then it was Tenny Garagos. Diddy and Tenny Garagos are like this, but I think that's because Diddy knows Tenny, because don't forget, Mark Garagos and Diddy are like this. That's the one that may or may not be counsel. So it was Mark Agnifilio in the 3rd row, Tenny Garagos, Diddy, then it was the other girl, the Shapiro girl, and like some other girl that just came on. I don't know her name. So that's who was there, okay? Now, Diddy's family was in the 2nd row. They should have been in the 1st row, but I think the 1st row was like for court officers overflow. They were in the 2nd row, okay? The girls had like slick back buns, parted in the middle, the twins. Chance, she dyed her hair auburn. She was wearing white. The girls had black, so they were all, the whole family was wearing black and white. So they were still color coordinating. Christian, he was just sitting there looking lost, wearing black. Justin, he is not 3 apples high. They came up to me, well, not to me, but they came up in my area to go when they were doing something with the court thing. I saw Sarah too. Everybody was there, and people were getting too close. And I was like, do they not know I got undercover security? And my man, thank you to my man. Do y'all not know there's undercover security sitting here watching, right? So I felt free. I was like, do with that what you will. I felt free, right? Because I know I had somebody from the corner looking out for me. But, right? So anyway, Justin had on a white button-down, black sweater, some shades. Misa had on blonde boho, platinum blonde boho. You know, that's her signature. Oh, Mama Combs had on platinum too. Quincy was sitting up straight. His hair is short, Caesar, dyed platinum. Christian was in all black, dressed in all black like a woman. Who else was there? Oh, Dana Tran was there. She didn't have the baby, I don't believe, but I believe Dana Tran was there. She's getting a little gray in her hair. I guess she's getting worried. Who else was there? Misa had a walker. And I said, actually, Jamie said this. Shout out to Jamie up in Ghana having the time of her life. She was like, how does Misa have a walker, but you still with Mary J. Blige? Like, when did this happen, okay? What else can I tell you?
Probably kissed her on the leg.
Diddy turned around and waved to the kids. So Mark Agnifilio, before we even get into the witnesses, right? Mark Agnifilio they were doing the jury selection, and they were like, no, we strike juror 43, this and that. Mark Agnifilio, I believe, tried to do something really cute. And by cute, I mean he was trying to be slick. He literally struck another juror out the jury pool, but Maureen Comey, that's James Comey's daughter, that's the head prosecutor, was like, Your Honor, he's supposed to be, that's supposed to be for alternates. So he tried to strike a juror out of the main juror pool and not the alternates. If you guys don't know, there's 12 main jurors, there's 6 substitutions, and there's 3 alternates. That way, there's basically, they all listen the same, they all sit in a jury box, but when it's time to vote, only the first 12 go back, unless, they need to do a pinch hitter. He kept trying to do something, but the thing is, when they called him, and he tried to do it 2 times, and Maureen called me 2 times, was like, Your Honor, what is he doing? Right? Objection. It threw off Mark Garrigo so much, he started going, hubba, 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 hubba. He literally was like thrown off. And that's when all their counsel was like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Funny thing is, when that happened, Diddy was looking like glaring, like at his counsel. And then when they all started convening and passing notes, and Mark Agnifilio was like, if you can give me a moment, Your Honor, Diddy literally went like this in his chair. He was mad, literally just threw himself at the back of the chair. You know what you're doing if you're mad. Speaking of Diddy, hold on, y'all, because I gotta show y'all this. Speaking of Diddy, if y'all saw the live today, then y'all already know what I'm about to do. But speaking of Diddy gets on my nerves. Diddy literally was in court trying to act like
her old man.
Listen.
Within this case, the prosecution started. We do have a full screen of some of the things that the government said in its opening statement.
Diddy was in court trying to act like he was old man River, but he kept breaking pattern. Side note, listen. Jamie said the lady reporting on another channel said she heard people online are trying to pay for it. Skip the line for up to $6. I actually paid for my cancer line to be held. I actually paid somebody to show up at 5 p.m. the night before, every single night, because I know I want to bring y'all the tea. 5 p.m. every single night, the night before, and stand in lines for me until 7:30. And your girl got there at 7:36. I was begging her not to leave, but I'm paying somebody this whole week a pretty penny. I need these ad revenue dollars to stand in line for me, because even when I was leaving at 5, there was a line forming for people to wait. So I got somebody waiting from dusk to dawn on some sinner stuff. Just make it to morning, or the vampire's gonna leave, But where was I? Okay. Oh, Victor Wiggins, thank you so much for the super chat. Kendra Curry, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. You guys, listen, I'm paying a pretty penny to be in the courthouse. Honestly, this week I actually do need the super chats, because y'all got Mama going through her savings in search of the truth. Sandy Staten, thank you so much for the super chat. So yeah. So anyway, when you get, let me start from the beginning. So when you get there outside, okay, now, to be fair, I'm paying somebody every day to stand in line for me from 5 p.m. until 7:30 a.m. the next day, okay? Shut up, I did it. I was supposed to be there by 7:30. Of course, my flight was late. There's always an issue with my luggage. I need to stop checking in, like literally 2 minutes before the gate closed, because I swear to God, they always think I'm a terrorist or something, and my luggage always gets held. I think they'd be like, yeah, it's giving bomb, check her luggage, right? So anyway, I was like waiting. So anyway, I woke up late. I was jet lagged. Y'all know me. Listen, it's the ADHD. Time is a man-made fiction in my book. Mel B, thank you so much for being a member for 10 months. You said thank you for the awesome coverage, TT. Listen, Mel B, listen, cool CCS. Y'all know I love y'all down. And so many of you guys were asking for me to go to the trial. And I wasn't going to go at first, but then my man hooked up security. I figured it was going to be safe because people are sick. That's a real complaint, but I'm safe. And then I made everything happen. And I really think like God wanted me there because everything came together super, super quick. But don't say that I won't be looking out for y'all. I know I don't do 100,000 celebrations or 500,000 celebrations, but when y'all ask me for something, I will go and do it. Also, Chaos Forever said, just want to affirm for science. Like many people are saying, women, you're Thank you, you guys. Carolina, you said thank you. Thank you, Carolina. Okay, so listen, so they're paying up to $600. Listen, I paid, I paid. What else are you going to do? I said, F it. At the very least, maybe I'll make it up in ad dollars. You know, sometimes you guys spend money to grow. You know, that's why I tell myself this stuff every time I overspend. You know, this is the universe. You got to throw it out, you know. Also, Mel B, you said this is the one time I wish I still lived in New York. You and me both, because I would be begging you to stand in line for me, or we'd be standing in line together, kikiing. Also, Sugar Spice 313, thank you so much for the super chat. Okay, so when I got there, I was supposed to get there at 7:30. Your girl got there at like 7:34, 7:36. Thanks God, my line holder, you know, I paid her a pretty penny, but it was still nice of her to even stay 10 extra minutes, right? Because she could have just been like, and I'm out. Like, you already paid me, goodbye, right? Oh, thank you, Love and Peace. Thank you for your awesome reporting. Okay, so thank you so much, Love and Peace. So we're sitting there, and I get out the cab, right? There's media everywhere. That's another thing. Because there's so much media, they're looking for normal people to interview, right? And I think they thought I was just a normal person. I didn't say anything, but then they looked me up and down, and people are saying hi, and they're like, oh, maybe she's pressed too. I think next time I'm going to be in front of TMZ being like, well, I actually think Tisa Tells on YouTube has the best take. I'm going to promote myself and go, because TMZ has been bombarding people, asking them for interviews. So it's packed. The press is out there. People are arguing online over places. They tried to argue the fact that I just came up, but I have to let them know, I paid for this spot. Please turn around and go bother someone else. But once I actually put that out there, you know, I did it politely, like, no, I paid, right? But once I did that, they kind of like backed off. But there were a lot of people cutting in line. And here's the thing. I was number 12 in line with my line holder, but so many people cut in front of me that I actually got pushed back to number 50-something. Thank God they opened 2 courtrooms, right? So it didn't work out, but I realized that me being so lackadaisical and thinking there's enough for everybody, I would have been left out in the cold, even though I was the person that actually paid. So I was like, you know what? Let me be on it tomorrow, you know? Like, stop being so Southern California chill. Thank you so much, Diamond Shorty, for the super chat. Also, Deborah swearing again. Said video, oh, thank you so much. Critical hit, thank you so much for the super chat, y'all. Oh, y'all really doing me right. I need to make this money back. Because my line holder, yeah, that 600 sits about right. Sounds about right. So anyway, so here's what happened. So it's all this pandemonium. And here's the thing, even the press is like, you know, getting into it. But it's completely safe if you want to come and try to Anyway, you go into the courtroom, right? If you're a woman and you wear heels, and you know I was wearing my Hillary Bank heels, that was my inspo. If you're a woman, you wear heels, okay? Okay, so you go and
I can't with her, y'all. Hold on.
Okay, so you go and you wear, even though I will say tomorrow, if anyone's gonna
right, we're hitting the pause button there on that evidence coming out of Massachusetts to turn our attention to New York, where both sides have now completed their opening statements in the sex trafficking trial for hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. And joining us now live on the ground is Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who has been inside of that federal courtroom for much of the day today. Kelly, I know we don't have our cameras there, but we have you, your eyes and ears. Tell me what you can about those
I'm
opening
trying
statements
not
from
to
the
just go to
prosecution
the
today.
hood to tell y'all about how he pissing them out.
Julia, yes, no cameras inside the courtroom because this, of course, is federal court. The opening statements by the government and defense counsel just wrapped up. So we just came outside of this courthouse. We're going to be back in 1 hour. As you can imagine, it is quite a scene here in New York. Hundreds of people around, people yelling, showing their support for Sean Diddy Combs. Some people, of course, showing their dislike for some of the things that he has been charged with in this case. So the prosecution started. We do have a full screen of some of the things that the government said in its opening statement. You can see that it says the prosecution's opening statement to the public. He was Puff Diddy, or Diddy, a cultural icon, a businessman, larger than life. But there was another side to him, a side that ran a criminal enterprise. You're going to hear about 20 years of the defendant's crime. So the government was very deliberate, very straightforward as it went through one person after another, talking about Cassie and another witness by the name of Jane, and then also another woman by the name of Mia, who worked for him as Sean Diddy Combs' personal assistant for a number of years. So the government went through each one of these witnesses talking about how they were forced into sex. Why don't we go ahead and listen to what the defense counsel had to say in its opening. I'm going to tell it to you, actually. We don't have a soundbite, excuse me, but we're going to put up a full screen of what the defense counsel had to say, but we don't have that full screen. But let me just tell you a little bit about it, and excuse me, because as you can imagine, there's lots of people that are around. A lot of people are standing in front of us right now that are strong supporters of Sean Diddy Combs. So when I talk about what the defense talked about and said in its opening, in a way, the way that they were delivering this opening, it was so interesting at first because what they did is they had Sean Combs stand up. Defense counsel turned around and said, "This is Sean Combs." He stood up. He is wearing a light-colored sweater, a shirt underneath, also light in color, and he stood there, and she introduced him to the jury, talking about his genius, how people wanted to be around him because he was so charismatic. So he stood there as his defense counsel was describing him and how he came to be, how he grew up here in New York, in Harlem, and then became this cultural icon. They talked about money and how the witnesses that you're going to hear from had 30 million and have 30 million reasons to come up here and tell you what took place, that they took this money, that they wanted something from Sean Diddy. They weren't forced. These were adult women, strong women, capable women, and they made a personal choice to stay in these relationships.
She didn't look strong in that hallway.
A crime. So that's kind of a gist of what defense counsel was saying in its opening statement. But again, quite a scene outside this New York courthouse. We're going to make our way back inside. You have to get in line to make certain that you get a seat inside the courtroom. You can't bring electronics of any kind inside the courtroom. So there's a line for that as well. But a lot of people, as they were listening to the openings, snickering at times during some of it, in which the defense counsel was talking about the baby oil, talking about how you're going to hear about the baby oil. You're going to hear about intimate details of someone's sex life and how these women were willing participants. She said it's going to be uncomfortable at times, and like any relationship, you're going to hear how this relationship also was toxic. So, Julia, that's kind of the latest here. If you If you have any other thoughts or questions you want to ask me, go ahead.
Well, Kelly, first of all, can I say you are an amazing professional to be able to stay focused when I'm hearing that supporter there in the background talking about Diddy getting the keys to the city at some point in New York and going on and on. But you are taking us there inside of the courtroom, so we are so grateful for that. I do want to ask you about this first witness that the prosecution is going to call. I understand that it has to do with a hotel surveillance video, because we've been wondering, where did this surveillance video come from if Sean Diddy Combs paid someone $100,000 to obtain it for himself?
That's one of the things that was talked about in the openings, Julia. So he had thought that there was maybe just one copy of this video when in fact there wasn't. So we're expected to hear from this witness who was handed a bag full of $100 bills. So he's going to testify about being, quote unquote, blackmailed to hand over this video.
All right, Kelly Craft, thanks so much. We'll let you get back inside of that courthouse.
Oh, no, not this one. I want to get to where it talked about the,
I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. The highly anticipated trial against Sean Diddy Combs is now underway. It was a whirlwind day. A jury was seated. Opening statements were delivered, and the first two witnesses, a male escort and a former security guard,
that male escort, baby,
on their testimony in a moment. There are no cameras allowed in court, but our ABC News team was inside watching, listening to it all. Prosecutors didn't hold back, laying out the government's case against one of the biggest names in entertainment. They say the public knew Sean Combs as Puff Daddy or Diddy, a businessman, larger than life. But prosecutors argued there was a darker side to him, saying he used his trusted inner circle to run a criminal enterprise for decades, painting a picture of a controlling, manipulative, and violent Combs who allegedly forced victims into days-long drug-fueled sexual encounters that prosecutors called freak-offs or wild king nights. The defense argued Combs is a complicated man, but said this is not a complicated case. His lawyer pointing to that disturbing video of Combs dragging and kicking then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, admitting it shows domestic violence, but arguing it is not evidence of sex trafficking. Sitting behind Combs today, his mother and children, all seen arriving at court, supporting Combs as he faces 5 counts, including sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. Combs faces a potential life sentence. He has denied all of these allegations. A jury of 8 men and 4 women will decide his fate. We'll break down what we know about each of them. There is a lot to get to after a jam-packed day in court. I want to get right to Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Kontursky, who was in court for this first official day of the trial. Aaron, opening statements began today. Break down these arguments for us.
They really set the tone for the entire case. You mentioned the kind of Jekyll and Hyde portrayal by prosecutors, someone that the world came to know as Puffy or Puff or Puff Daddy or Diddy or Love, somebody who was larger than life, who was a mogul in multiple industries, and yet who had a darker side. A lot of celebrities have an entourage around them, Eva, but Sean Combs, according to federal prosecutors in their opening statement, operated as a criminal enterprise with trusted insiders whose goal was to coerce women into these drug-fueled sex performances. Some of them, prosecutors said, lasted for days and were referred to by Combs as freak-offs or wild king nights. And the defense sought to downplay these episodes, calling them the consensual threesomes of a celebrity who led a swingers lifestyle. And though they conceded that Combs could be violent with women, even women that he loved and was in a relationship with, they said he's not charged with being violent. He's not charged with domestic violence, with assault even. They said he's charged with sex trafficking, and what's depicted on the video in the Los Angeles hotel from 2016. And in other episodes, they say may show Combs being violent, but doesn't show him being a sex trafficker. And they say it wasn't part of any racketeering conspiracy as alleged.
Now, we saw Sean Combs' family going into court today. Did he interact with them at all?
He did, right from the start. He came into court, Eva, all smiles as his eyes immediately locked on to his family seated in the second row, his sons and daughters, his mom, all there to support him. He blew them kisses in court, made gestures across his heart. But once the opening statements began, Combs was much more dispassionate. At one point, as a man who says he was paid to have sex with Cassie Ventura while Sean Combs sat in the corner masturbating, Combs pushed his chair away from the defense table. His arms went down and he crossed his legs, listening impassively to all of this. At that point, when the male escort was testifying, his daughters left the room.
As former Intercontinental Hotel security guard Israel
Can I back that up?
responding to that now.
With Cassie Ventura while Sean Combs sat in the corner masturbating, Combs pushed his chair away from the defense table. His arms went down and he crossed his legs, listening impassively to all of this. At that point, when the male escort was testifying, his daughter... He did, right from the start. He came into court, Eva, all smiles as his eyes immediately locked on to his family seated in the second row, his sons and daughters, his mom, all there to support him. He blew them kisses in court, made gestures across his heart. But once the opening statements began, Combs was much more dispassionate. At one point, as a man who says he was paid to have sex with Cassie Ventura while Sean Combs sat in the corner masturbating, Combs pushed his chair away from the defense table. His arms went down and he crossed his legs, listening impassively to all of this. At that point, when the male escort was testifying, his daughters left the room.
The first witness, former Intercontinental Hotel security guard Israel Flores, testified about responding to that now infamous incident, speaking with Combs and his ex-girlfriend, a key witness in this case, Cassie Ventura. How did Flores describe that day?
He set the tone by immediately, as the first witness, taking jurors back to 2016. It was March 5th when Flores said he responded to a call from hotel staff of a woman in distress on the 6th floor. He goes up the elevator. He sees Sean Combs sitting in a chair with what he described as a devilish stare, and Cassie Ventura clearly shaken. And he walked the jury through hotel security footage. Some of it that the prosecutors played outright, some of it that Flores had captured on his phone, and it shows the detail of what occurred. There is Cassie. She's in blue pants and a hoodie. She's not wearing any socks. She reaches into a bag at the elevator, and as she's putting on her socks, Combs comes barreling around the corner, knocks her down from behind, stomps on her, and the episode continues from there.
And Aaron, I have to ask you, we are seeing these sketches of Diddy in court. He looks very different than how many may remember him appearing. Tell us how he looks.
Well, he's certainly much grayer. You know, we've seen him that way over his last few court appearances, but people who may be, tuning in and seeing him for the first time here at the onset of trial, he's not allowed to color his hair in jail while he's incarcerated, so he's gone gray, both his hair and his beard. He's thinner than we saw him, certainly than when he was first arrested, much less bloated than he appeared at that September date, and he is right now impassive, as prosecutors have control, describing what they say he did.
Aaron Katersky for us there. Aaron, thank you so much. Let's dig in deeper on who is in this 12-person jury that could decide the fate of Sean Combs, as well as the legal teams involved in this high-profile case. Here to break it all down for us is ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer, who's worked as a defense attorney here in New York City. You've also closely been following this case. You were in the courtroom today. Let's talk about this jury. 8 men, 4 women. What do we know about them?
So yeah, we actually know a lot. And as you pointed out, 8 men, and these are some of them. We know some of their jobs, massage therapists, retired telephone linemen. But aside from gender and employment, the other thing I want to focus on is age. We have a number of individuals who are over the age of 50. And the reason why I point that out is two things. One, it's pretty understandable. This is going to be a case that's going to last for 8 weeks. You got to think about who can take that much time off. The other aspect of that as well is when you're talking about consent, we as defense attorneys seem to see a difference between young people and their understanding of consent and older people. So this may benefit the defense to some degree. Of course, we have the women here as well, 4 of them, and one age 74.
Why do you think these jurors were chosen?
So sometimes when it comes to choosing a jury, it's not just choosing who it is on the jury, it's eliminating those you don't want to be on the jury. For the defense, I think they believe that these are individuals that are not just going to be unbiased, but also maybe lean towards their favor. For the government, they believe that based on the answers that these individuals gave, they're going to be able to achieve that conviction. So either side thinks they see someone favorable in this group.
Let's talk about the legal teams here. Let's start with the defense team.
Yeah, so we have some big names that you may know. Mark Agnifilo, you might know him from the XM Defense, where he represents Keith Raniere. Tenny Garagos, the last name may be familiar there as well. Mark Garagos' daughter. Alexander Shapiro is one of the appellate attorneys. And then here are some names that you might not know, or you may. Brian Steele, a bit of a famous defense attorney in Georgia, made even more famous in his defense of Young Thug. And Xavier Donaldson, a defense attorney who is very well known within the Southern District of New York here, as well as Manhattan, the Bronx, and Brooklyn. Anna, Jason, and Linda all rounding out the team as well and supporting the defense of Sean Combs.
Okay, now we have to talk about the prosecution. This is the Southern District of New York. I mean, they have a crazy high conviction rate. What can you tell us about this team?
So I know about the Southern District of New York, both as a contributor and as a defense attorney, yes. Conviction rate about 90-95%. So we have the interim U.S. Attorney, Jay Clayton. He's not actually at the defense table, obviously the prosecution table, but he is the head of the Southern District of New York. And then you have other prosecutors
Please
as well.
hit the like
I want to skip
button.
down just real quick because you might recognize the name. Maureen Comey. She's actually one of the lead government prosecutors in this case, the daughter of James Comey. And this is an all-women's team here. I don't think that was an accident, but it seems very powerful when they're arguing the case when there are so many female alleged victims in this trial.
Yeah, let's talk about who we heard from today, a male escort, a former security guard. What does this tell you, if anything, about the prosecution's plan here?
Two things. One, they're laying the foundation for someone very important to testify. They want that video in, and they also want the individual who was allegedly forced to have sex with that male escort to be able to testify as to that event, that being Cassie. We believe, or I think it's probably easy to assume, that she'll be testifying, if not first thing tomorrow morning, then at some point in time tomorrow. Now, that could be, in essence, to kind of like a strong, powerful witness. This is, as the prosecutor says, victim number one, but it also could just be logistics because we know that she is pregnant, very much so, and they might want to just let her get in, out, and get out as quickly as well.
Yeah, also you can't travel too late into your pregnancy, one of those things that we all know about. Today, Cassie Ventura's husband was actually seen leaving the courthouse. Tomorrow, we're expected to see her possibly taking the stand herself. That's pretty early in a case, right?
So it depends on the strategy. I can see why that would be perceived early. This is supposed to be the star witness. Why wouldn't you want to lay the groundwork for more evidence first before you have the major witness? But when it comes to convincing people, convincing a jury, oftentimes recency, meaning getting that information out there first, and frequency, how often you talk about it, is a great way to lock in that information to a jury. And then, of course, just timing. Life for her means that she has to start sooner rather than later.
Brian Buckmeyer, always helpful. Thank you so much.
My
As
pleasure.
Brian mentioned, the 12 New Yorkers selected for this jury will spend weeks in the courtroom hearing evidence from both sides. And joining me right now is Eric Rudish. He's not part of this trial, but he has spent decades researching juries with attorneys as a jury consultant. Now, we know, Eric, from court records that Diddy's team is using a jury consultant. When you work on a trial like this one, how much do you really know about these jurors?
Well, you try to find out as much as you can, certainly. So based on the 12 jurors, that the information we have, in addition to gender and age, as a jury consultant, we're also looking at their occupation. So are they going to approach this case more from an emotional standpoint or an analytical standpoint? And based on the 12 jurors' occupations, there are several jurors that are good for the prosecution. There is a social worker, there's someone who works at a nonprofit, there's someone who works at a nursing home, but there are also more analytical jurors who are more likely to scrutinize the evidence, such as an investment analyst, a logistic analyst, and even a scientist.
Let's drill down into that a little bit more, since you were talking about their jobs and the jobs that they have. How do attorneys use that information as they make their arguments to play to these ideas that they have about these jurors?
So it's a very emotionally charged case, and the prosecution is certainly going to use that, the emotional element to, help, prosecute their case. For the defense, they want jurors to separate the emotional aspect of the case, and you saw from up front the one thing
8 men, 4 women.
Whatever Sean Combs' actions were, it's separate from the charges that are being brought forth against him. So you want someone who could separate the emotional aspect about this case from from the evidence, or how they will approach the charges and whether or not they feel that Sean Combs is ultimately guilty.
Eric Ritters, thank you so much for joining us today. Well, still ahead, the defense and prosecution gave an overview of their cases today. What does that reveal about possible strategies, and how might they play with the jury? We break down the arguments next.
Please get the lights up.
Back now to the case against Sean Combs. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer is back with us. Also joining us, attorney and legal analyst Ebony K. Williams. Brian, let's start with you because you were in court today. What did you think of the prosecution's opening statements? Do you think it was compelling for a jury?
Oh, very compelling. I think it was good in the sense it was just under an hour, so I don't think people really drifted away. They were able to stay focused, start off with some good themes and also some good examples, talking about a night in which Sean Combs heard allegedly that Cassie was with another man, got an employee up at the middle of the night at gunpoint, and the security guard rushed this person's house, broke in, and laid out how these intricate examples of Sean Combs flying off the handle, as they seemingly described, were parts of this racketeering conspiracy, that he had this inner circle that helped facilitate not only every want and need that he wanted, including these freak offs, but also how he used them to control individuals around him, marching through each and every one of the elements in this case. It was easy to follow and very compelling.
Ebony, what do you think of the defense's strategy?
Yeah, I think the defense did a lot of the things that they needed to do by way of conceding some obvious points, right? You can't tell this newly sat jury of 12 that you didn't see what you saw on that tape, that horrific, traumatic, violent tape of Sean Combs violently attacking Cassie Ventura. So I think the defense was smart to say, hey, if we were here for domestic violence, we wouldn't be here. He absolutely committed that act. He did some horrible things. He might even be perceived by many of you as a bad person, but it's not against the law to be a bad person. My client is not being charged with domestic violence in this particular matter. Thus, this is a not guilty verdict. That's their argument.
But do you think it's problematic they admitted, basically, that?
No, I think they had to, Eva. I think preserving credibility is going to be so key for both the prosecution and defense, right? So they had to try to earn some level of truth-telling points, if you will, with this jury. And I think they were able to do that by admitting the very, very obvious things we know so far.
Okay, so Brian, as a defense attorney, obviously they're going to be trying to poke holes in the prosecution's case. Do you think they're going to lean into that?
I think that's the case. As Ebony laid out, you have to admit to some degree to garner credibility. You can't go and look at that video and be like, well, that's AI. That's not really our client doing that. And I think there's a strength in saying he is guilty of some things, but he's not guilty of anything. And I think Tenny Garagos, the defense attorney who did the opening statement, a very well-reasoned, well-argued opening statement, said it's not about whether or not he's a bad person, it's whether or not the government or the prosecution has proven their case. And these are the allegations, these are the charges, these are the elements, and juxtaposing and saying this is domestic violence, this isn't coercion, going to the heart of what sex trafficking and racketeering is, saying it's not this, it's this is what he's charged with, not this, not guilty. I think it was the only argument that could be made.
Okay, the name of the show is called Burden of Proof, Ebony. So what is the burden here?
Yeah, it's a clear and very, very difficult one, actually, if you're the prosecution. They have to prove beyond any reasonable doubt, keyword, there is a reasonable doubt, that Sean Combs is guilty of everything Brian laid out, from the racketeering, the coercion, the sex trafficking, and all of it. And, they're going to have a lot of elements to meet. And again, the more the defense can convince that this is one private citizen's sexual proclivities that may be out of bounds to us, you and I, common man and woman, but this is within his legal right and it's not against the law to have these Sexual preferences, the more they can make that, the prosecution is further and further from their burden of proof. But
she was trying to leave.
Brian said, the prosecution could successfully land the plane of connecting dots, right, between sexual assaultive behavior, physically abusive behavior, and individuals, that's going to be key, right, other individuals working in connection and in collaboration with Sean Combs to execute that under coercive measures. That is how you get to guilty.
Ebony K. Williams, Brian Buckmeyer, thank you both so much. Coming up, a music mogul on trial, the cultural impact and public perception as Diddy's trial begins and his former girlfriend prepares to take the stand.
Ooh, wow. Diddy, you did it this time.
It's no surprise there's extreme public interest around the world in the Diddy trial as testimony gets underway. So what are people saying? For that, we turn to Kelly Carter, who covers entertainment and pop culture for us. Kelly, we heard it from prosecutors how Combs created this empire and that the public saw him as a larger-than-life cultural icon. Yet prosecutors say there was this other side to him. He's pleaded not guilty to all the charges. The interest is crazy, though. We've got to talk about the lines outside the federal courthouse this morning. Our Aaron Katursky said it was more than a block long. One guy was in the front of the line trying to scalp his seat for $350. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
I have never heard of such a thing as someone trying to scalp a ticket to go inside of a courtroom. I have seen, and we all have seen, fandom, line up with signs in support of people. I remember covering that 2009 Chris Brown assault case out here in Los Angeles, and I was met with just hundreds of fans who were outside with those fans in support, with signs in support of Chris Brown, but never someone waiting in line trying to pawn off a ticket as if this is Star Wars. This is something we've never seen before.
I'm curious, too, when it comes to Diddy's public image, does the verdict in this trial really matter, or is the damage to his reputation already done?
I think the damage is significant, and quite frankly, I think that the court of public opinion is ultimately going to weigh so heavily, if he is found not guilty of these charges. I don't think that we should all imagine a world where he goes back to business as usual, because I think we know too much, and that's kind of the sentiment, I think, of a lot of people who've been paying attention to today's testimony and who read anything going into today's testimony. We know too much, and people are going to have very strong feelings about the things that they've discovered about him.
Kelly Carter, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy.
Y'all get my likes up. Please.
Opening statements, and there is now testimony in the case. And the opening statements kind of predictably laid out the prosecution's case and Diddy's defense of what the prosecutors started with a bang, with a statement that clearly they knew would get a lot of headlines, but more importantly, get the attention of the jury, talking about details, graphic details from the freak-offs. And we should warn the people watching this, this is going to get graphic. Right. And there's a reason that they last week kept saying that to all the prospective jurors, it will be graphic. What was said this morning by the prosecution said that Diddy hired escorts for these freak-offs, and that it wasn't just sex, there were other acts that were going on. The one they said that really got everyone's attention, they claimed that he hired escorts, on one occasion hired an escort and forced him to urinate on Cassie.
In a mouth.
And then that he forced not only the escort to do this, but Cassie is the way the government lays it out. So we talked about this in our morning meeting today, so let's just be real here. This is shades of R. Kelly.
Absolutely.
And that reason they brought that up first. I mean, I don't think there's any question that R. Kelly paints a picture that kind of resonated with everybody. And the prosecution came out of the gate with something that sounded similar. They want to
show him, they want the jury to see him see Diddy parallel to R. Kelly, who everyone knows is going to be in prison for almost all the rest of his life.
And so,
so if you got him convicted,
of course, and that's
you want it, right?
And that's effective.
Yeah.
They also, and I think this is going to become a really important part of this case on both sides. The prosecution painted Diddy as a violent, jealous man who could not handle any attention heaped on Cassie by any other man.
Right. And that was part of their argument around the videotape, which obviously they mentioned as well. They talk about that beating, and the government was setting up what they know that Diddy's side is going to say this was.
ThredUp is an online thrift store and consignment store, and they have such high quality pieces that are all
setting up what they know that Diddy's side is going to say this was not about forcing her to stay. This was an argument about jealousy, about she thought I was, found another phone number. So the government is trying to rebut that already. Right?
Well, yeah, and the defense already came out of the gate in their opening statements
kicking her,
addressing that, and they are saying that Diddy is a violent man. They said that he has a huge anger issue. Controlling his temper.
They said there was domestic. Yes, they said yes, there was domestic violence.
That's the key. That's the key. They are saying that this relationship was steeped in domestic violence, and they're alleging on both sides it was the nature of their relationship. Now, domestic violence is a crime, but it's a state crime. He's not being prosecuted for that.
He's being prosecuted
so
for. And
that's
they also reminded the jury of that.
And that's why they're raising it right now. They're saying, look, we're conceding it. There was a lot of domestic violence, they say on both sides. But if you want to target Diddy for a domestic violence abuser, guilty as charged, it's just he's not charged here. This would have been a state crime. It's not your job. Right. So they're coming out of the gate trying to diffuse what they know is coming next, which is the Cassie video.
Right.
Yeah, and look, I think that's a pretty sound strategy to basically concede on the issues that they can't really win. There was some violence. That video tells a pretty vivid story, but that's not what he's on trial for. However, I think the prosecutors have a pretty interesting case. It sounds like they're sort of kink-shaming Diddy about his private affairs, but the further you get away from the norm, where you have escorts who are saying that they were maybe ordered to urinate on Cassie, it starts to look like it can't be consensual, and that's what they want to convince the jury, is that no one wants to be urinated on. So saying these were consensual terms of a relationship gets harder to believe to a juror once you've established that he's doing things so far outside of the norm.
Yeah, and so, the defense said essentially, look, this is his lifestyle, this is his life, and that they are essentially trying to go inside Diddy's bedroom to prosecute him when they couldn't get him elsewhere. It's stunning to me that this parallels exactly what one of the lead lawyers, Mark Agnifilo, told us in our documentary, The Downfall of Diddy. I believe it was the second installment. This is what Agnifilo said, and they presented essentially this to the jury.
Let's switch our focus to the government. In my opinion, I'm just going to say it the way it is. No friend historically of the successful black man. Okay, none. And they start making this case, in my opinion, as a takedown of a successful black man. Here's a man who has made some of the most important businesses owned by a black man. Run, owned, created, founded. The vision was that of a black man. What have we done? We have reduced him, not everyone, but a large amount of our society, to being a monster. That should make us shake in our boots.
So and that's essentially what Tony Garagos said during opening, that this is she said the government has no business in his bedroom. They have no business judging him or trying to charge him with crimes based on how he lives his life consensually in his bedroom.
So there are three main charges here. There's racketeering. the difficulty prosecutors have in this case is racketeering is usually an organization. This one, they're focusing on an individual. The only person charged with racketeering is Diddy. Right. And they're saying essentially he ran a crime organization centered around all of this. The second thing they're arguing is this interstate transportation, which is what we call the Mann Act, which requires force or coercion or duress. And that's going to be a huge point that the defense is going to raise, namely that did these alleged victims, who were ex-girlfriends, most of them, did they do this consensually or were they pressured to do it?
Well, the prosecutors did talk about that, not so much with Cassie, but with another ex-girlfriend who they're referring to as Jane Doe, and they said that she's going to testify that she was, having sex with these escorts, but she always wanted them to wear condoms, and Diddy forbade that, said they are not going to wear condoms. And she says that she admits taking drugs, and she's going to testify to that, but that she is going to say that she only took them to get through it, because this was not something she really wanted to do, and that Diddy was, there's the coercion that the government needs to show the jury. So.
But the third one is this interstate transportation of a sex worker, which doesn't require fraud, duress, or coercion. That's the one, in a way,
they kind of got him on.
Yeah,
because he's admitting that.
He's admitting. But you know what the issue is? The issue is, are these sex workers?
Right.
And that's going to be a big part of this, because if they are sex workers and the jury believes it, and they did cross state lines, he's going to have a tough time with that third charge. But the argument they're going to make is these people, they were men, were not sex workers. That's going to, again, this is going to get
then the definition of what makes,
and what makes somebody a sex worker.
And is that, or one of those sex workers, one of the escorts, going to be testifying for the government saying, yes, I was a sex worker?
If they have that. Our information is that we know of at least one person who has been subpoenaed, who they say is a sex worker. This guy says he wasn't a sex worker, although concedes that he was in that room having freak-offs with Cassie, as Diddy watched. So that, there are three very different charges here, and they're all going to be kind of intermingled in terms of the testimony, but ultimately the jury is going to be told, look at this, here are the elements, look at this, here are the elements, and look at this, here are the elements.
By the way, just a couple quick things, a little bookkeeping. The jury that was finally seated this morning, 8 men, 4 women. Reportedly, the 8 men are split evenly, 4 men of color and 4 white men, and the women are all women of color. So interesting. We'll see what that does. And Diddy's, we should also say Diddy's family, his kids were all there. I don't know if they're going to be there every day, but all of his kids, the twins, his sons were all there.
And before court started today, he was in court reading a Bible.
Yes, and actually, I just saw a report that says that he has been at every opportunity reading that Bible while he's in court.
Hi, it's Tasha from Brooklyn, and we moved past the 6-pack of white women on the jury, and we've arrived at 8 men and 4 women. So I still think there's a big bias here, especially if the defense is mounting this narrative that, on some level, boys will be boys. Like, we can maybe allegedly commit domestic violence, but we also have our kinks, right? And I think that naturally will lend itself to some more sympathy from the male perspective, if I had to be honest. But I'm also honestly very surprised that the jury won't be sequestered, given how much information is out there.
You hit on something, because I got to tell you, I don't know how this jury avoids social media. You open your Facebook page and boom, there's a feed.
I don't know how exactly. If they go onto social media, they're going to see something about the trial. The judge has said they are not to watch news or
impossible
or use the internet.
It is
how is
just impossible for a 9-week trial. That is going to be the biggest hurdle to avoid a mistrial. Okay, we're going to take a break.
All right, when we come back, they are back. That would be one Taylor Swift and one Travis Kelce.
Hold on. Please give my likes up. Give my likes up.
Your mother and I think you're hooked on phonics.
It's preposterous.
For some reason, you'll have 6 backups who are also following the trial and can sub in if need be. In court today, I want to go over a couple things. Diddy came into court wearing his usual outfit of his sweater and a collared shirt underneath. His family was also there in support, lots of his children. I believe his mother, Janice, was also there. And Diddy was seen at counsel table. I was wondering how this struck you, Jason. Reading Bible scripture while
reading the Bible.
Bible in hand. Had a Bible in hand. And this is one of the things that, many prisoners get their hands on Bibles. They sort of, find themselves renewed by being brought to justice in this way. But how do you think this plays? Sitting there, the jury is now impaneled, and he's there like a little choir boy reading the Bible.
I think it's hard to get into to the minds of any jury, any juror, and they can be surprising what they say after the trial sometimes. To me, it is such a transparent and cynical move by Diddy. We're going to convince the jury that this person, they're going to hear testimony about, even by Diddy's own admission, that he was one of the most sort of sexually deviant, and that's not a judgmental term, just deviant people that we've ever heard about. The things that he was engaged in, we'll talk about a couple of them today.
Or outside the norm.
And that's being quite kind. Yeah. That he all of a sudden, and by the way, is a mogul and has been involved in shootings and involved in a lot of different drug stuff. He's all of a sudden, after being caught and imprisoned and in a fight for his life, has found God. Now, that's quite possible.
Absolutely.
But to me, he's not going to testify, right? So that testimony is not going to be there. You got to just leave it to the jury to infer what it will by the fact he's reading the Bible. It seems, again, so cynical and trying to pull the wool over the jury's eyes just a way I just don't think it's going to be effective.
Yeah, look, we don't know what's in his heart, what is sincere and what is not. It struck me the same way. Very transparent, very cynical. It's one thing to dress appropriately, let your gray hair grow in. Some of those optics, I think, do become effective because you look maybe enfeebled, and it humanizes you a little bit. This was a bridge too far. But I want to get into, we are now into opening statements here. So the prosecution is stepping out to frame the entirety of the case and sort of give a roadmap of where they're going to prove these 5 counts against Diddy. How did that go, Jason?
So let's start with obviously prosecution starts with opening statements. Opening statements are not meant to argue the legality, not meant to argue guilt and innocence. It's simply to lay out a factual roadmap for what the jury is going to hear over the length of the prosecution's case. Here's how they started. They said, and I'm going to quote this, "To the public, he was Puff Daddy or Diddy, a cultural icon, a businessman, larger than life. But there was another side to him, a side that ran a criminal enterprise. He called himself the king and expected to be treated like one. He expected his inner circle to cater to his every desire, including his sexual desire. And his inner circle made sure he got everything he wanted." This is the prosecution's efforts to lay the groundwork for the fact that he was the mastermind of a criminal enterprise. That is really what's at stake here, not just the individual acts of illegal conduct with respect to prostitutes and transporting people across state lines, but the fact that he was the mastermind of a criminal enterprise, and that sort of sets the tone for everything that the jury is going to hear from that point forward.
I thought it was a brilliant way to encapsulate, look, you have to puncture the celebrity a bit and say, this guy was a big guy, he was a music mogul, I'm sure you love some of his songs, but he had this entire other life where he's running a criminal enterprise and demanding to be called king. They're setting up those themes so that the jury cannot just be starstruck by Diddy. Diddy's a massive superstar in the same way that O.J. Simpson was and Harvey Weinstein to a lesser extent in his trial. You have to bring them down to reality. And I thought the prosecution did a good job of saying, look, we know you're sitting here in front of a celebrity. They're acknowledging that this is a big trial. We know the publicity is out there, but this is a guy who also ran a criminal enterprise.
So then they went on to really paint Diddy as an unforgiving monster. And again, the defense has their opportunity. We'll talk about that, and they will have their opportunity to put on witnesses too, which will certainly counter some of what you've heard from the prosecution. But they really did paint him as really an unforgivable monster who perpetrated some awful acts on not just Cassie, but some others as well. They referenced right off the top the beating video of Cassie, which is the centerpiece of their case. They told the jury that Cassie will testify that she was abused throughout the relationship, including being urinated on by prostitutes and having sex with men while Diddy watched. Obviously, as long as this was consensual, there's nothing illegal about it. But the prosecution also said they would hear that when Cassie finally said she'd had enough, finally went to Diddy and said, I don't want to do this anymore, he brutally beat her, which is what you're seeing on the videotape.
Cause she didn't want nobody pissing in her mouth.
That she cover up the bruises, including a purple eye, a purple black eye, take ecstasy and perform in another freak off right there. His appetite at that moment was not sated, and the fact that he had just beaten the snot out of her meant nothing to him. And this is what they said that you're going to hear testimony about, meant nothing to him, and he wanted her back in action.
Yeah, and it's purposeful what the prosecution
back
is doing
to work
in pointing
and
out
open your
the
mouth.
urination
Oh, my
episode, or
God.
that alleged episode with the prostitute urinating on Cassie and bringing up the beating, because they have to move away from just a consensual with non-consensual elements relationship, right? The defense is going to do a good job, I anticipate, saying this relationship had some kink to it. And Diddy is not on trial for having sexual desires that are maybe outside the norm. What he's on trial for, though, according to the prosecution, what they're going to hammer home is people don't consent to being beaten up and covering up their bruises. People don't necessarily consent to being urinated on, although that one is going to be sort of more questionable. There are various sexual things that go on of that nature.
But I think to that point,
the further you get from
what they're
that-
trying to do is say, we understand that he's going to argue that it was just outside the norm, and everybody, this CNC, this consensual non-consent, which is sort of in vogue these days. We understand that they're going to argue that. But let me tell you, once a woman gets beaten so badly that she's got to cover the bruises on her face with makeup, it's no longer consensual. That's not within the norm. And you're going to hear Cassie testify that that was not normal and that was not something she had ever consented to. And in fact, what the prosecution say is, right when she said, I don't want this anymore, that's when the beating got really ferocious. That's going to be the centerpiece of what they're saying about Cassie. They also indicated that another woman by the name of Nia would testify, who was Diddy's employee, and they said that she's going to testify how he forced himself on her sexually, snuck into her bed to penetrate her against her will. Again, he is not on trial for rape. They are simply trying to establish that this man is... rape. They are simply trying to establish that this man is a monster capable of anything.
That's right. And to do so, as you said, Cassie is going to be front and center in this case, but she's not the first witness. The first witness, however, is related to that episode in 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel. They brought up a man named Israel Flores, who was a security guard at the hotel when this whole incident occurred. He said that he was brought up, he went up to Diddy's room after hearing this commotion, saw Diddy in the robe that we've seen in that video, saw Cassie sort of cowering with the bruises.
Yeah, she had a hoodie sort of pulled down over her face, but he could nevertheless see the bruising.
He could see what went on. He was in there in his capacity as a security guard, though. So there was a commotion. He had other guests that he was concerned about. There had been a vase that was broken. You can see in the video, Diddy is throwing this vase. It had shattered. The security guard says, he said, you're going to be responsible for that. This is a hotel. Whatever you guys are doing needs to be taken back to the bedroom. It doesn't sound like he was acting as a law enforcement officer to necessarily intervene in what happened and maybe get Cassie to safety. He was there to say, you guys can't do this in a hotel.
And let's just sort of take account of what we have here. We have one of the biggest stars in the world and a security guard for the hotel who is called up to his room to say, like, basically, stop doing this in the public, bring it into your room, which is an awful thing to have said, as opposed to, like, you know, trying to intervene to protect her. But you can just, this is the treatment that celebrities get all the time. It's very intimidating for a hotel security guard to go up and confront Diddy.
Yes.
And so Diddy tries to handle it. Tell him how Diddy tries to handle it.
That's right. According to this security guard, Diddy had a handful of cash in his hand and offered it to the security guard. Now, Diddy's defense then cross-examined this man and said, well, you said that he was responsible for this vase, intimating that maybe the handful of cash was to pay for the vase and move on. On redirect, which is to rehabilitate their witness, the prosecution stood up and said, well, what did he say when he had the handful of cash? At which point Israel Flores said that he wanted no one to learn of what went on here. So then it sounds like they've really crystallized that this was a bribe offer to cover up what had transpired in that hotel room and in the hallway.
Again, nothing illegal about offering a hotel security guard hush money to not talk about something that he saw. That is completely legal. But it again just paints this picture. They're creating the entire image of Diddy as a monster capable of beating the hell out of a woman who simply doesn't want to engage in his sex acts anymore. And number two, willing to pay people off to keep it quiet. This is not just somebody, a monster capable of monstrous things, but somebody who's capable of running a criminal enterprise, of throwing money around as necessary to get what he wants. And this is the kind of thing that they're going to try and point out throughout the course of the prosecution.
And to that point, the security guard also testified that he came back to work a few days later. The footage was nowhere to be found, he said. He had recorded some of it on his iPhone. There were some questions about whether the nature of the footage. Remember, the CNN footage that people have seen, some say it looks sped up. It looks like it's not necessarily, it looks potentially edited in some way. He described that these security cameras are motion sensitive. The way they're filming is not necessarily a direct image of reality, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was edited in any falsifiable way.
Right. So let's move on to the defense's case. We heard opening statements from Tenny Garagos, one of the counsel for Diddy. She stood up and said, look, this is about voluntary choices that adults make in a consensual relationships. Again, to your point, trying to establish this was consensual. She said, quote, you may know of his love for baby oil, by way of example, the thing that has maybe permeated the sort of public consciousness more than anything else, that he's had this 1,000 bottles of baby oil. She says, this is weird. It's strange. However, is that a federal crime? No, she answers her own question. She says that what you're going to see in this video is indefensible. It's horrible, the Cassie video. It's dehumanizing. It's violent. However, she went on to say that while the video may be evidence of domestic violence, that's not what he's on trial for. It is not evidence of sex trafficking, which is what he is being charged with. They went on to say that she wrapped up her testimony by telling the jury that the accusers weren't forced into sexual relationships and were willing participants who could have left at any time, directly contradicting, obviously, what the prosecution has said you're seeing in the Cassie video, which is non-consensual relationship at that moment. Tenny Garagos also suggests to the jury that those who will testify against Combs have a certain motive. For many of them, the answer is simple. Money, she said. This is all about money. So she's trying to diminish the witnesses you're going to hear, saying what they really want has to do with these civil suits and the money that could come from Diddy.
And listen, there's a certain type of power in the way that she framed this case as well. Domestic violence is not what he's on trial for. That is a state offense. These are federal crimes of sex trafficking people across state lines. That's why this is in federal court. I thought she did a great job of redirecting the attention on that and refocusing the jury on what we're actually faced with, sort of convicting Diddy of. The other thing is, I think that Tenny Garagos,
if you own a home, you're at risk of house stealing.
The other thing is, I think that Tenny Garagos is pretty effectively sort of laying the groundwork of don't let the government intrude in your private affairs. I think that's something that will resonate with some jurors, that, look, he had an active sexual life. We all have our bedroom doors, and trying to get into the hearts and minds of the jurors to think, would you really want the government worrying about everything you did in your bedroom? I thought that was fairly effective.
I did too. I thought that was pretty good. She's very talented.
I'm gonna show it in a minute.
Many of us were very familiar with her before this trial
I hope
started.
you're okay. I think I got something to say.
One of the great
criminal defense attorneys
for
she
celebrities,
survived, right?
That's ever been. But nevertheless, I thought that she did basically what we can see in the transcript. We can't watch the trial live. She's doing a very effective job. The evidence is tough, right? I'd like to, as we get into this trial and do this more and more, sort of figure out who won the day. Anytime the prosecution is going to have their opening statements followed by their witnesses, they're going to win the day. They're going to have a more effective day. If they don't, they're really in trouble. But Tenny Garagos, at this point, the defense is simply
trying to survive this opening case at the opening day.
And I've sat in trials before, civil trials, where the other side's putting on their case, and it's hard to watch. Yeah. You're having a parade of witnesses who are influencing the jury in one way, and all you can do is wait, suffer through it until you have your chance to counter these points. Hopefully for Diddy's side, that will happen.
I want to ask you one more point. She brought up money, and Cassie famously lit the fuse on all of this by filing that bombshell civil lawsuit against Diddy, which she subsequently withdrew, right, per a settlement. What Tenny Garagos did effectively, and not directly about Cassie, was plant the seed in everyone's mind that a lot of this is just about shaking Diddy down for money. He's a man worth 9 figures. And she's even planting that seed about Cassie, even though she's not saying Cassie withdrew her claim for money. That's in everyone's mind. That was reported.
That was. The difficulty that Cassie has is she's already got the settlement. Yet she's still going forward risking a lot as a pregnant woman going through this, getting up on the stand to testify what a horrific man this is. There's no monetary value. There's no future monetary value to Cassie of this at all. I mean,
oh, interesting. How does that cut? She already got her check, so she just wants to spike the football on his head.
It's sort of like somebody who has, you know, no matter what they, I guess, some sort of immunity from prosecution. They already have the immunity. Right. They're going to go forward and testify anyways. It almost makes her more believable in a sense. But to your point, she got her money already. That was a private settlement that we didn't really know much about. This video leaking was everything. It changed the narrative. He would not be on trial but for this video leaking. I don't know. I think that she's very hard to cross. I just think given that videotape and given how much sympathy there must be for her, she's very hard to cross.
We'll know in a few days.
We will. All right, so we got a few questions. Derek, do you think Diddy will retaliate against those who are against him if he's found not guilty? He's shown a degree of sort of at least professional retaliation. There's allegations of professional retaliations against those people who don't toe his lawn.
Look, if he is found not guilty, he should quietly resume his life with his millions of dollars. If any acts of vindictiveness, he's really rolling the dice. So I would hope not.
Yeah. Shar Powell asks, how do we know that he's actually reading the Bible? We don't. It says Bible on the front of it. It says Holy Bible on the front of it. So we assume that he doesn't have it sort of like comic books in there, I guess.
And he may be born again. He's been spending some time in prison. It does happen, but I thought the move will backfire.
Yeah. And here, Andre, you hit the nail right on the head. I think that Diddy's sexual interests just make him a sick person, but that's not the same as that's not what he's being accused of. That's the entire objective for the prosecution here, and their difficulty is they've got to bridge that gap between a person with strange sexual taste,
claiming the disgraced music mogul forced a male escort to perform a lewd act on his ex, Cassie Ventura. Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson told the 12-person jury, which is...
How's your father? How's your father feeling today?
Opening statements for Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial kicked off today, and his family showed up to support him. However, it was prosecutors that came out swinging, claiming the disgraced music mogul forced a male escort to perform a lewd act on his ex, Cassie Ventura. Assistant U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson told the 12-person jury, which is composed of 8 men and 4 women, that Cassie first agreed to participate in Diddy's now infamous freak-offs to make him happy. But the romps allegedly became violent over time, with the rapper beating his then-girlfriend if she left early or took too long in the bathroom. The rapper also allegedly once threatened to destroy Cassie's career by releasing footage of her having sex with dozens of male escorts, according to Johnson. Diddy's defense team responded by acknowledging that their client has a bad temper and a history of violence, but they argued that he is simply not guilty of sex trafficking, with Tenny Garagos telling the jury, quote, "Domestic violence is not sex trafficking." The jury selection process, which started on May 5th during the first day of trial, was postponed until early Monday after the feds and lawyers were unable to narrow the pool of 12 jurors and 6 alternates. Throughout the selection process, a series of questions were asked to potential jurors, including whether they were familiar with a list of celebrities who could be mentioned during the trial. Among the names brought up, Kanye West, who leaked a prison call he made with Diddy, rapper Kid Cudi, whose car Diddy is rumored to have blown up, and Michael B. Jordan, who allegedly had a brief romance with Cassie. According to the defense and prosecutors, former Destiny's Child member Michelle Williams, singer Dawn Richard, who is suing Diddy for sexual abuse, producer Dallas Austin, rapper Young Miami, who dated the Bad Boy Records founder, and his family members were also on the list of those who may be mentioned.
Oh, whoa,
Cassie,
whoa.
who dated Diddy from...
Why Michelle?
Allegedly had a brief role with Diddy, celebrities who could be mentioned during the trial. Among the names brought up, Kanye West, who leaked a prison call he made with Diddy, rapper Kid Cudi, whose car Diddy is rumored to have blown up, and Michael B. Jordan, who allegedly had a brief romance with Cassie. According to the defense and prosecutors, former Destiny's Child member Michelle Williams, singer Dawn Richard, who is suing Diddy for sexual abuse, producer Dallas Austin, rapper Young Miami, who dated the Bad Boy Records founder, and his family members were also on the list of those who may be mentioned. Cassie, who dated
please
Diddy
hit the like button.
2018, is confirmed to take the stand. She sued him in 2023 for allegedly raping and abusing her throughout their decade-long relationship. The very pregnant Long Way to Go singer, who will be welcoming her 3rd child with her husband Alex Fine soon, is considered a key witness for the defense, as some of her claims have already been corroborated by a hotel surveillance video from 2016 that was leaked to the press last May.
Diddy has pleaded not guilty to 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. His lawyers hinted that they would try to use the defense that the rapper was a swinger, not a criminal. His federal trial is expected to last around 2 months, and if convicted, he could face life in prison. The trial is not televised because cameras are prohibited inside this courthouse. So stick with page 6 for all the latest updates.
Hold on.
Trial was definitely eventful. Aside from compelling and revealing opening statements by both the prosecution and defense, the jury heard the first witnesses in the case. Everything from Astroglide to alleged paid sex work to explicit text messages, Diddy wearing a disguise, the rapper being pushed up against a wall. This is your definitive recap of everything that happened inside of that courtroom today. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, it is here. Today was officially day 1 of the federal criminal trial of Sean Diddy Combs. From Cassandra Ventura's lawsuit back in November of 2023, to the plethora of allegations and other lawsuits, to the raids on his properties, to his arrest and indictment in September of 2024, to his multiple attempts to seek bail, to several superseding indictments. May 12th, 2025 marks the day the jury was finalized, opening statements began, and we heard the first witnesses, the first witness testimony in his criminal trial. Remember, this is a trial where federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York assert Combs engaged in sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, transportation to engage in prostitution, that he established this network, this enterprise, this pattern of criminal activity that was particularly engaged in the abuse of women. Now, we're going to plan to do daily recaps here on Sidebar every day of this trial if we can. Because as you know, federal courts don't allow cameras or recording devices, but we want to provide you enough details and description so it feels like you are in that courtroom watching it play out. This is a high interest case. This is an important case, and we feel it is only right that we try to provide you with as much information as we possibly can. So right now, we are going to lay out day 1. Jury being finalized, opening statements, the witnesses who testified. So for that, I'm going to bring in Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who is in that courthouse today. Elizabeth, so good to see you, as always. First things first, okay? And I want to let you go because you haven't even eaten today. I know there's been so much going on today. So first things first, what was it like today getting into that courtroom? I understand you had trouble getting into that courtroom. What was...
Oh, well, Jesse, I got here super early, a little bit like around 7 o'clock a.m. this morning, and thankfully we had somebody kind of holding a place in line for us because that's how many people want to be here, want to be inside that courthouse, want to be inside that courtroom, whether it's the general public, whether it's journalists, whether it's other lawyers just wanting to get a piece of the action. Let me tell you something, Jesse. When I came here this morning, the line was all the way down the block, and it was just crazy packed with so many journalists, so many people who just wanted a chance to, again, be inside that courtroom today. But it was just a madhouse. Like a lot of us in the media were kind of comparing it to the Hunger Games. It was really that serious because a lot of people wanted to make sure, one, that they had their place in line, and two, that they were able to get inside in their same place in line, because obviously with this being such a high profile trial with a lot of eyes on it, everyone wanted to be inside that courtroom. So there were some times people were cutting the lines, people were trying to get ahead. They were, trying to get up in any way possibly that they could, because, when the bailiffs take us up to that courtroom, they're taking us in maybe packs of 6 or 7. It's never like the full group and then the rest are turned away. But there are some people who try to sneak in with the group that are going up. But, the bailiffs, sometimes they catch it, sometimes they don't. But then, us who have those press passes were able to kind of glide right through. But then there were, still a packed courtroom today, especially for day 1, especially for a very high profile day, that being opening statements. But it was crazy just to even get inside that courthouse today.
And I followed you on X, and you took a video of Rodney Lil Rod Jones, who filed his own lawsuit against Sean Combs. He showed up today. That was something, to say the least. I mean, was he in the courtroom at all? Were you surprised to see him? What was he doing?
I was a little surprised to see him kind of standing in the line, just, like the rest of us. He came in probably, I would say, a little after maybe 7:30, like it was right before 8, because around like 8:30, they started bringing us into the court house. But, I was kind of stunned to see him inside that line with all of us. He came in, he had the sunglasses on, he had 2 chains on, not to be confused with the rapper or anything like that. But, a lot of cameras were inside his face, and through his attorney, he had pretty much said that he is not going to be making any type of comments, not going to be giving any type of interview. So we didn't see any of that while we were standing outside the courthouse, because remember, for our viewers, we're not allowed to have our phones inside. As soon as we walk inside those doors, for the most part, the marshals, the bailiffs are telling us to turn our phones off. And so once we all got inside the courthouse, I saw him
I need 5 more lights.
with his attorney as well as his entourage,
I'm gonna go
going up
ahead
with
and
members of
end.
the public. And so probably for the first half of the day, I did see him inside that courtroom. He was paying attention. He was following along with, the preemptive strikes of the jury selection, as well as the opening statements. And then around lunchtime, not kind of clear where he had went afterwards, or maybe, had no idea where he went pretty much afterwards. So, and this afternoon, I didn't see him in the courtroom, but for this morning, we definitely did see him inside that courtroom, along with his attorney as well, too.
By the way, totally off topic here, but
I
can I
think
talk
he
about something very
guilty.
serious for a quick minute? So debt doesn't just show up one day. No, it builds little by little. Credit cards, car loans, medical bills. Suddenly you're juggling all these payments. You're feeling stuck. You know what I'm talking
I
about.
think he
But here's
guilty
the good news.
there.
We got American Financing as our sponsor. So they help homeowners like you every day. They use your home's equity, and they roll
With
that
their
high interest
eyes.
debt into one simple
They say,
affordable payment. They are saving
afraid.
homeowners an average of $800 a month. There's no judgment. There's no pressure. Just real solutions that put you back in control. Starts with one phone call. Only takes 10 minutes to get started. And by the way, there's no upfront fees, so it costs you nothing to find out how much you can save. And by the way, if you start today, you may be able to delay your next 2 mortgage payments. American Financing salary-based consultants are ready to listen. They're ready to
They
help.
may be witnesses. I don't know.
Financing.
I don't know.
American Financing
I
today,
don't know.
866-891.
Maybe they don't need them.
2821.
Maybe the
That's
case is strong enough.
866-891-2821, or go to AmericanFinancing.net.
I was shocked about the peeing in the mouth and
Before we even
stuff.
get into the opening statements, before you even get into the jury being finalized, who was in the courtroom for Sean Combs? Were there any notable faces? And how did Sean Combs appear?
Well, he appeared, in good spirits, considering that today is a very big day. It was day 1. It was opening statements. He was brought out a little bit before 9 a.m. He was wearing a gray sweater. He had a white undershirt on. He had gray slacks. He had his glasses with him. He waved at his family, kind of gave the little heart sign as well, too. He stood up at the defense table. He was sorting through papers. But one thing I found pretty interesting today, Jesse, is that we could see him reading the Bible. And this was before the preemptive strikes were going on. And so maybe this
He
was,
should have had
to get
the
him into
Bible
good
in their
spirits.
sex
Maybe it was
off, so
because
maybe
needed,
he
maybe
would
some
have
religion or
defeated the
that type of
devil.
thing. And so, yeah, a lot of us kind of spotted him with the Bible. At first, we were like, is that a Bible? And then when he got up, put it inside of his, I guess, his legal briefcase or whatever he brings inside that courtroom, then we're like, okay, yeah, that was definitely a Bible. But as far as some memorable faces inside that courtroom today, it was really stacked. We had Mark Garagos in the courtroom, Karen Agnifilo, who is the wife of Mark Agnifilo. We had Lil Rod inside that courtroom. We had Doug Wigder inside that courtroom, and he's a notable face because he represents Cassie Ventura, who is expected to testify tomorrow. We had Quincy Brown inside that courtroom, one of Diddy's, he's Diddy's adopted son. We had Justin Combs, his mother Misa was inside that courtroom. We had Christian Combs, Delilah Combs, Jesse Combs, Chance Combs, Janice Combs, that's going to be Diddy's mother. We had Dana Tran inside that courtroom. Dana is also a pretty notable figure too, because she is the daughter of Diddy's youngest child, Love, who I think is maybe 2 years old, 3 years old at this time. So obviously, the baby wasn't in the courtroom or anything like that. Then we also had the twins' caregiver / guardian. She's also Kim Porter's best friend as well, too. And so those were some of the pretty big notable faces that we saw inside that courtroom. Now, I did hear rumblings that both Lisa Bloom and Gloria Allred were also inside the courthouse today. I believe that they were in the media overflow room, which is pretty surprising given, their, credentials especially. But those are the main noticeable people that were inside that courtroom today.
Now, you mentioned jury selection. You mentioned the preemptory challenges. We knew that the day was going to start off with finalizing the jurors. You need a jury for a criminal trial. Now, both the prosecution and the defense, they use their preemptory challenges to whittle down the number, right? They're striking jurors not for cause, but for whatever reason, as long as it's not an improper reason like race or gender. But the defense took issue with who the prosecution was excluding, right?
They definitely did. You know, the defense was pretty much saying that, you know, the government had struck 7 black people, and they had a pretty big argument about that. The defense was alleging that, you know, the government has this pattern and demanded essentially for the government to respond to this, that being the Batson challenge, which Brian Buckmeyer kind of gave me a little privy to from the legalese portion of it. But even as the government was kind of going through all of the prospective jurors that they were striking down, you know, they were for pretty, you know, you could understand the reasons why. You know, number juror 51 knew all the defendant's children.
The easiest way to clean out your closet is also the best place to discover your style.
One knew all the defendant's children, knew 17 people on the people in places list, watched Making the Band, had a fiance that served time for drug conviction. Another juror, this was number 216, she was moved to strike for cause. She had been arrested 3 times. She didn't disclose, or this person, excuse me, didn't disclose that they harassed a police officer. Juror number 181, also in this batch, the husband spent 21 years in prison, was concerned that the government was concerned she would be biased. The government says she had worked with individuals with bipolar disorder and concerned she would bring her outside knowledge into this case. Another was dismissed because they had 2 brothers who served time for felonies. This person had watched a news segment about this case and said that they would lose 30% of their income, but was worried that this person might also have an agenda of wanting to be on the jury. Number 163 had an English language issue. Nephew was a gang member who allegedly shot a police officer. Another one went to high school with Diddy. Another prospective juror that was struck out, you know, gave inconsistent answers and referred to police as a-holes. Obviously, I'm not going to say the full word.
Okay, I'm gonna get ready. Hold on.
Hey, you guys, what's up? How y'all doing? Listen, if you guys haven't heard, I'm covering the Sean Diddy Combs trial live. I was in court. Go watch the live. I gave my first impressions about all the messes going on. But we got to talk about the twins. Okay, there are rumors going around that the twins left the court during Diddy's trial. That's kind of true and kind of not true. They were in there for when the SMEX worker testified. However, when he started going into detail of everything that Diddy did to Cassie, maybe they realized, oh, this isn't a good look, and they got out of there. However, they did not stay gone. Listen, I want to say this, okay? I do want to say this because let's get into this. First of all, I think it's actually disgusting, right? And I mean disgusting, that they're trying to tell us, because I was in court, the opening arguments, Tanya Garagos, that's Diddy's defense attorney, did a good job. But the opening arguments were trying to convince us that, and honestly, if I didn't know the facts, I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Are trying to convince us that they just had an unorthodox lifestyle. First of all, Diddy's daughter shouldn't be in court, period. But the fact of the matter is, they're not saying what he did to Cassie didn't happen. They're saying it's not illegal. And if you truly had 3 girls and the way you treated Cassie was so horrible that their delicate little ears can't even be in court, but you're trying to say this was a lifestyle, but you know who was in court? Your boys. And do you know who we need to be worried about? The fact that you had your boys around us, to the fact that they can listen, but your delicate daughters have to leave. Y'all, listen, let's get into this. Anyway, I'm going to read the article from People magazine, but keep in mind that I was there, so I'm going to add my own little flavor to what was going on. I'm going to be live all day tomorrow, please. And I believe Cassie is testifying tomorrow, so it's going to be a really, really good day. They said Sean Diddy Combs' 3 daughters left the courtroom during the SMEX workers' graphic testimony. They didn't leave, oddly enough, and so he started talking about the way Cassie was scared and he was always seeing Diddy lay hands on them.
They said the daughter left the courtroom in the middle of his SMEX trial when a male SMEX worker gave testimony involving graphic and lurid details of the music mogul's alleged activities. Again, why do you even have your daughters there? Diddy has a witness list. He knows the days the SMEX workers are going to be testifying. Why did you have your daughters there? It's not a good look. Daniel Phillip, a male escort, alleged in Manhattan court on Monday, May 12th, that he had been paid by Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, to have SMEX with her as Diddy sat in the corner watching them while he... He also testified that he witnessed Diddy becoming violent toward Cassie. Now, here's the thing. If y'all watch my live, y'all already know. Let me go over the details of what happened, because I was there. He actually said that Diddy said that Cassie said that was her husband. He said that he was in importing and exporting. They said, well, how did you know it was Diddy? He said, I recognized his voice. And they were like, well, how come? Well, basically, I'm paraphrasing. How come they didn't recognize the face? And they said because he had a bandana. He was sitting there in a white bathrobe with a bandana tied around his face this high, and he had a baseball cap on. Imagine walking in, seeing somebody with a bandana and a baseball cap in the corner, wanting to watch you. And you have he has a bathrobe on, and he's talking about he had exporting. Diddy, you better stop him ever playing. On top of that, right? He said when Cassie first answered the door, he said that I was in the court. I took notes. I know. If you want all the details, go ahead and watch my live. He said that he was in the court, and Cassie literally showed up with opened the door because they were like, oh, it's a bachelor party. He was expecting bachelorettes. He opened the door. It was just Cassie. She was wearing some stripper heels. She was wearing a red wig, and she was wearing red lingerie. And she was like, would you mind running a baby oil on me? And he looked at Cassie, and he said, okay. And get this. She was supposed to pay him $200. She gave him $2,000. And she said, listen, do you mind if my husband's here? And he was like, what? And she's like, don't worry. My husband's not gay. He just likes to watch. And then he was like, oh, bet, because I'm not down with that. He said that so what happened was that day, he paid the money. No, Cassie gave him $2,000 and said, yo, if you stay, I'll tip you, right? He said Diddy directed everything, told them what to do, where to touch that, told them to rub baby oil. Cassie was not in control, okay? So even if Cassie handed him the money, it was Diddy's money. Then when they were done, he said it was really quick. He gave Cassie gave him an extra $2,000. So I think he got like $4,000 or $5,000 for that thing. Cassie gave him like a couple of extra $1,000 as a tip. And then Diddy was like, yo, like me and your boss got beef. Do you mind if we contact you directly? And he was like, yeah, sure, why not? And then this is the crazy part. Sorry. He was like, yeah, sure, what's not? But the crazy part of this is that when that happened, he told Cassie, yo, get his number. Cassie got his number. The guy said they were at the Gramercy Park Hotel. The guy said that he hit the street. Literally, just levels on the street. And Cassie texted him, was like, yo, send me a pic. And they were like, what'd you do? And he's like, I sent her pic. And then right after that, she called him, was like, yo, why don't you come back up? So he said, okay. And he came back up, and he was up there for hours, dipping and diving, slipping and sliding, riding all the rides and sliding out all the slides with Cassie. While Diddy sat in the corner with that bandana and the hat and the bathrobe, doing what he do. I know. You guys, listen, start following my lives. I'm giving y'all details nobody else has, right? Anyway, but here's the thing. They were in there for, I believe, the first part, if I'm not mistaken. However, it was only when they started to talk about Diddy getting violent to Cassie, they were just like, oh, why were they even there? I blame Diddy. You knew who was going to be on trial. But you need those daughters to show that you have a loving family. But at the end of the day, you just look like, also Diddy was in there looking like Bram Stoker's Dracula. I know he thought he looked like one of the vampires from Sinners. He had that little goatee on, fresh shape up. His hair was white, but he looked like one of the vampires from Sinners. He was trying to look like
I know, right?
Christian soldiers. But he looked like one of the vampires from the movie Sinners. Anyway, bad vibes. They said Diddy's daughters, recent high school graduates, Chance Combs, and 18-year-old daughters Delilah and Jesse left the courtroom twice while he testified, each time during graphic accounts of sexual encounters, including a time where Diddy allegedly mama in a corner while he was having sex. Again, they were not gone the whole time. They just got up, then they came back in, then they got up. Jesse and Delilah had on all black with a center part and buns. And Chase looked like she dyed her hair auburn and had on all white. The whole family was black and white color coordinated. Prosecutors also played in court the hotel security footage from 2016 where Diddy is seen assaulting Cassie, shoving her to the ground and kicking her as she lay motionless. Now here's the gag. Teddy Garagos tried to make it seem like all he did was touch her back and pull her back. We don't know why this is happening. But the prosecutors, I actually really love this. The prosecutor sat there and was like, run it back? No. Can you run it back one more time? One more time? They kept asking them to rewind. So literally while we were sitting there, we saw Diddy going in on doing that vile stuff with Cassie. By the way, Cassie's husband was in the back the whole time, looking like, I know, like, the amount of self-control Alex has to have because he looks so,
okay,
as he should.
So since y'all don't want to get my likes up, let me tell you, Tory Lanez, I'm going to end on this.
I'm still having nightmares. I'm still just mentally messed up.
He got stabbed today.
Rapper Tory Lanez, who's currently serving a decade in prison for shooting Megan Thee Stallion, stabbed behind bars. According to TMZ sources, the hip-hop star was in the yard of this Supermax state facility in California when he was attacked by another inmate. He was rushed by ambulance about an hour away to a hospital in Bakersfield. His injuries are said to be non-life-threatening. Just last week, he somehow shared this photo to Instagram and bragged about his new album dropping this summer.
She took my heart, filled it with nothing but pain.
Were you afraid for your life at that time? I was really scared.
Tory's been behind bars since 2022 when he was convicted on 3 felonies related to shooting Megan after a house party in Hollywood 2 years prior.
Is your client remorseful? He is incredibly remorseful and ashamed and embarrassed that all of this happened.
And the two are still at war. Last fall, she filed suit against a blogger she claims is cyber-stalking her on Tory's behalf.
You said in order to be heard, you need to speak. I never let people see me be so vulnerable. I feel like I'm in such a fresh space. I've just gone through so much, and I'm so at a point where I don't care about a lot of stuff. I'm like, okay, at this point, girl, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Let me see what old boy said before I go. Good night. Where is old boys? It's a short I got earlier today. Have a good one. Y'all, good night. I'm gonna play it.
In breaking news, Tory Lanez apparently just got hit up in the California state prison he's in. According to multiple sources, including a corrections officer, Tory was walking the yard at the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi when he was attacked by another inmate, and it was so severe, he had to be rushed to a nearby hospital that wasn't really nearby. It was in Bakersfield, an hour away. Because of the distance, it's likely that he was life-flighted, and if you've ever been to prison, you know how serious it is when the helicopter touches down. There's a risk that the person even makes it. Now, pretty much no details have been released, but that also means something in itself. This is California. If another race did it, there would have been a race riot, so it's likely that whoever did this was inside Tory's inner circle.
Oh, wow.
They face attempted murder charges. In breaking news, Tory Lanez apparently just got hit up in the California state prison he's in. According to multiple sources, including a corrections officer, Tory was walking the yard at the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi when he was attacked by another inmate, and it was so severe, he had to be rushed to a nearby hospital that wasn't really nearby. It was in Bakersfield, an hour away. Because of the distance, it's likely that he was life-flighted, and if you've ever been to prison, you know how serious it is when the helicopter touches down. There's a risk that the person even makes it. Now, pretty much no details have been released, but that also means something in itself.
No details? How they do that? Oh, is he in there with Brick Baby?
Did you make that appointment?
Oh, I'll do it when we get back. So Tory was.
Pray for Tory.
So Tory was stabbed in the yard earlier today. Now
That was real. I thought
yeah,
that was.
and this comes months after he dropped the Kendrick Lamar diss track, and people in LA was threatening to do this to him.
I didn't even know he dropped a Kendrick diss track.
I didn't either.
Well,
That one passed me by.
Well, he was on the song with DDG.
Ooh.
And then he dropped like a few subliminals that was like, I dare niggas to do me how like they did Drake. You feel me, right? So pretty much like, so folks thought that it was a Dot diss. A few, like Dot associates came at him on Twitter. You feel me?
So you telling me Kendrick sent the hit?
Are you really?
I'll be real, man, because bro, you get stabbed after you diss Kendrick, after threats were made to you.
But how long ago was that
Dot
diss track?
needs to get investigated. I'm just being real, man.
How long was that diss track?
Like a month or two ago.
And you think they waited a month to do it?
Shit. Hey, listen,
Because
bro.
there's a lot of politics on those yards, and like it could be that, but it could be something else. Like he might owe some money for drugs.
He might just piss someone off.
Look. Tell him who we got on the line.
Hey man, it's Brick, not the trick, man. You already know it's
Brick in the building. Brick in the building, man. Brick, what's going on?
Oh, wow.
Oh man, just tapping in, seeing what's up with my brother. I just got cussed out for Remo for being less of a friend. It wasn't on purpose though.
Yeah, I had to get on, bro. I'm like, man, why?
Yeah.
He ain't called me in a minute. Bro, he's in jail. He's busy.
Trying to grab,
Oh, that's crazy, bro.
For ride out. I know that's right.
Oh, Flacco here, Bro Rogan here.
Hey, we trying to line up. We lining up the interview with Ross, Remo, and Brick, man. We trying to make that happen.
Yeah, man, what we gonna do?
This call is from a federal prison.
Hey, Remo, we trying to do that Tuesday.
Yeah,
trying to do it Tuesday.
Nah, for sure, bro. We miss you like a motherfucker out here, bro. It ain't the same, bro. It ain't the same. Man, this shit boring now, bro. This shit boring now without you, Brick. I ain't gonna hold you. We need to.
Oh, they said he was stabbed by the Mexicans.
We ain't talking about these haters.
Oh,
man.
wow.
They be DMing these federal pages, man. You got it.
Yeah, nah. We staying off that shit. We staying off that shit.
It's all love and light when we get out. You already know we some hell of a niggas regardless, man. I ain't talking about nobody else out here, though.
Yeah, man, this shit boring, man. Listen, bro, I'll be real though, bro. Like how LA YouTube used to have like a different storyline and every day, bro. That shit going down, my nigga. But listen, bro, niggas, it's just bro.
And Brick, I ain't gonna lie, niggas, you such a giant in this that this got boring without you out this. Bro.
Hey man, hire P Nice and DW Play.
Man. Shout out to DW and P Nice, man. Shit, so what you be keeping up with, like what's going on in the blog?
Yo, Tory just got stabbed, man.
You seen that Tory Lanez got stabbed up in jail?
Whoa, Tory Lanez got stabbed on the 55th yard?
Yup, that nigga, he headed to a LA hospital right now.
Oh wow, they buzzed down Tory. What they busted there? They took his story shit. They don't nobody know what happened.
We don't know the full details yet.
Well, wait though. Tory dropped a Kendrick Lamar diss track like a month ago, Brick. You feel me? And niggas was online warning him and sending him threats.
Yeah, it get like that. I don't know why they think Kendrick ain't from nowhere. They keep on underestimating Dot really from where he from. I ain't gonna say nothing on these lines, but Dot really from where he from.
Yeah.
But this the thing. He on the program yard to where he ain't even. It gotta be over a drug date or something because
that's what I
that's the
just
thing,
said.
right? where he at is no politics as far as gangs and all that. That's why people be trying to go other places where it's structured, because anything go where he at. Like the PCs run the yard.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Really? I told you.
Yeah. They ask you when you get there, like, you active or you programming it. You say you programming, they gonna fuck with you. But the PCs got gangs on them yards. They call it the Deuce Fives.
Wait, what's it called? Deuce Five. PC?
It's called the Deuce Fives. Okay. Look it up. The Deuce Fives. They run the PC yard. Then if you tell them you active, they gonna get off on you, because they don't like people who ain't snitching.
But yo.
Oh wow.
All right, yo. What's your best advice then for Tory Lanez to navigate jail and not get stabbed up again? Because, you know, like, he's like a celebrity, you know, like, he's probably like new, you feel me, right? Because he's been in jail right now for like a year.
Stop being so friendly with everybody. Don't talk to niggas, man. You got status, man, and use that as your way around here. Look, I'm in the car, right?
Okay. All right. Well, the phone.
So wait, check this out. I try to tell y'all, I don't think, like, I know people want to run with that Kendrick narrative, but like on the yard he on, like the first thing I thought about is a drug deal. Like he owes some money.
Yeah.
Drugs. Like,
yeah, man, this is sad.
The boys got to him on that yard or whoever, but like, and what's that on? What's his hair?
Not like lips like that. No, but also too though, bro. Like, bro, Tory Lanez, bro, was just like. Was apparently like buying out everybody like a commissary and for Christmas.
What?
Yeah, bro. Bro, listen, bro. If he filled up everybody's like shit to the max, right? You feel me? And he's like billing niggas out. He's doing like the foundation to like you feel me? Like, so he again, bro. When it comes to certain environments, bro, I'm not gonna say it's.
I just saw that he was stabbed by the Mexicans. Hold on. I'm trying to get up out of here. Hold on. KEYGLOCK Media. Let's see.
When it comes to ideas for your bath project, you have options.
Okay, for real, y'all. After this, I'm leaving.
Welcome back to KEYGLOCK Media. This show is KEYGLOCK.
Check it
out, man. All right. So listen, some more breaking news just actually happened inside of the Tory Lanez case. Now y'all know they tried to get Tory Lanez up out of it. They tried to kill Tory Lanez, send him up to the upper room, send him up to guys, send him to wherever he going, right? Now, reports have now came out and said who tried to kill Tory Lanez, because that's what a lot of people was asking. Somebody from inside the prison said who tried to kill Tory Lanez, and also that the jail is about to go up in flames. It's about to be a huge war that goes on where Tory Lanez is at because of people in the group that actually tried to kill Tory Lanez. Now, why they tried to kill him is still yet to be answered at, even though they're saying it's probably over he refused to do some snitching. But either way it goes, let's get into it. First of all, before we get into who stabbed Tory Lanez, I'm gonna show y'all a video that's actually going viral right now. It's of Tory Lanez getting airlifted. So he did have to get airlifted over to get medical care, right? Or he probably would have died. His stab wounds and stuff was so severe that just getting assistance of where he was at, they didn't even have the right supplies to assist him. Remember, he was stabbed 14 times. Well, here goes a video of him. I guess this is where he made it to where they were about to care for him, right? It looked like they just pulled him off of there. You can see the little bed that he on right there. Really don't even look like Buddy moving. Maybe they got him under some type of anesthesia or something like that. Here's the thing about it though, right? Tory Lanez, remember, he out on the yard, so he ain't in PC where a lot of other celebrities go. So for sure, he gonna get points and credit for doing that, looking like a real nigga, right? But aside from that, you know, the other end of that, looking like a real nigga out
away from protective custody and stuff like that is the fact that you might get killed. Where he's at is real deal. This ain't no baby play around, but it's a real deal prison where he could literally get killed. That, as you can see, they literally tried to kill Tory Lanez to take his life. And I know a lot of y'all thinking that, hey, this people try to do this, people try to do it. But anyways, let me show y'all what someone inside of the prison actually said. You know, what they actually said on why, well, not why, but who actually did it, which of course is shocking to some people. Well, kind of shocking, but it shouldn't be too shocking because you understand this is prison and it ain't like an outside world, especially in Texas. See, in Texas, you know, blacks and Mexicans get along. Like, they just get along, they live by each other, all type of stuff. But inside a prison, it's like everybody got their cliques. You might have the Mexicans team up with the whites of the areas to try to go against the black people, or however it may go, right? But it's audio from somebody inside of the jail. Now, of course, academics said this audio actually came from Whack 100. He says Big Whack received information from someone inside the prison, and they said the Mexican stabbed Tory. And here goes the audio.
Oh, wow.
This morning, brother, the Mexican had a bust on the boy Tory. You know, they airlifted him and all that, so you know, nah, that's gonna respond when we come off this shit. We're gonna respond the right way to that.
They laid the yard down.
Nah, it happened in the building.
What was it over? It was over. So what, he had did he have a gambling debt or something?
Nah, nothing like that. Shit, we don't even really know. We don't even know the whole situation, you know.
So it was just like some foul play. So it's gonna be up.
Yeah, it did. For sure was some foul play.
Damn, cuz. Wasn't nobody right there with him? Wasn't nobody right there with him when he went down?
Yeah, I guess nobody knows. This morning, brother,
Anyway, so just by hearing that, whenever y'all heard Buddy say that they gonna respond accordingly, y'all know it's finna go down. Y'all know it's about to be a big war behind Tory. They finna do bodies for Tory, slide for Tory. Well, they can't slide, so they gonna stab for Tory. You know what I'm talking about? And it probably gonna be some more bodies that actually drop, because they didn't just try to injure Tory. They didn't just try to do something to him to make him learn a lesson. They actually tried to kill him. 14 stab wounds to the back, to the torso, to the 14 total to the face. They didn't just try to hurt Buddy. They tried to make a message and actually kill Tory Lanez. Now, with that being said, let's just take it to the comment section, see what y'all have to say, right? The first comment says, bro, Whack is an informant, dog. Ain't no way. So people believe just because Whack has a lot of people in a lot of different places that give him information, some try to correlate that with being an informant. In actuality, Whack is a businessman. Within business, a businessman who also was a blood or is a blood. You know what I'm talking about? So in business, you're going to have all different types of people that you're connected with. You might be connected with Elon Musk, but then you also might be connected with the local blood or the biggest blood, or maybe a super younger blood, right? So you just see the span of an Elon Musk all the way down to like some bloods or something like that, or whatever it may be, right? And within that span, it's a lot of other people that you meet along the way, and it's about connecting with them, right? Just because somebody is a gang member or was a gang member, whatever it is, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like an informant or they're this or they're that. If you don't grow inside of this life, if let's just say you started as just a gang member, if you just stay a gang member your whole life, first of all, your life probably ain't gonna be long. We already know most gang members don't survive past, they say, hey, you make it to 20, 25, you're OG or whatever it may be, right? Because they always die at an early age, right? But if you start out as a gang member and then you exponentially grow and meet other big major people, millionaires, like Tesla people, this company pays, you're a management for an artist, so boom, that's other people you got to meet, touring people, this people, that people. Along the way, you're going to meet a lot of people. So it could be the fact that Whack 100 just knows a lot of people and a lot of stuff that's going down. And with knowing a lot of people and stuff that's going down, and also having that street information, knowledge and stuff as well, that's a person that's probably going to have a lot of information. But anyways, everybody think whatever they want to think it is what it is, but that's just another perspective, a way to look at it, right? Anyway, so the next comment says, they said Whack 100 was gonna know this. That's crazy. Rock Nation did that. So of course people will be saying Rock Nation. Who paid for the job? Nobody knows who paid for the job. They just know that the Mexican tried to do it. So it could